Chapter 111. In Wuxia, the major immortal clans usually adopt the elder system to manage the clan. That is to say, the first elder, the second elder, the third elder, etc. are set up to manage all the affairs of the family. To be frank, from Chen Daoxuan's point of view, this management system is outrageously inefficient. Because there is a huge problem with the Presbyterian system, the division of responsibilities is unclear. The elders of the Presbyterian Church seem to be the most powerful people other than the patriarch. But what is the specific responsibility of each elder in the family? Not sure. For small matters, the elders can step in and take care of them. For big matters, the elders sit down with the patriarch and discuss together. And finally, the patriarch makes the final decision. Thus, if something goes wrong, even a specific person in charge cannot be found. Even if the clan divides the powers of the elders, but the clan is big, and the people below do not know which elder is in charge of which aspect, and it is easy for the decree to not be effectively implemented. Therefore, Chen Daoxian firmly wants to ban the Presbyterian system. In other words, he wants to make drastic changes on the basis of the Presbyterian Church. Clan meeting. Just when everyone thought that Chen Daoxian would propose a family elder system, Chen Daoxian unexpectedly proposed a new system. Department management system? Hearing this new term, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Taoist monks are better. After all, they are young and receptive. Whether it is a family elder or a department head, to them they are basically new words. But Chen Xianhe on the side frowned. The family elder system is the management system adopted by most of Xinghai's families. He had never heard of this departmental management system proposed by Chen Daoxian. However, Chen Daoxian came up with a lot of new things, such as naming the workshop as a factory, changing the name of the clan to Chongping No. 1 Xiuxian Primary School, and so on. Seeing everyone's doubts, Chen Daoxian explained, "Yes, it is the department management system. Although there are many immortal seedlings in our Chen family, the oldest of the Fu family is only 3 years old, and the youngest is just born, even if these children have entered immortals. In a short period of time, the cultivation base of our family cultivator will also be at a relatively low level, so we shouldn't promote a cheer-refining cultivator to be the family elder, right? Wouldn't that make others laugh out loud?" Chen Daoxian casually found a reason to talk nonsense. In fact, in Guang'an Mansion, there are many cheer-refining families who set up cheer-refining 9th-level cultivators as elders. Hear this. Chen Xianhe breathed a sigh of relief. He originally thought that Chen Daoxian was going to play again, but he didn't expect that this ministerial management system was just a substitute for the family elder system. Thinking of this, Chen Xianhe felt relieved. Seeing the relieved expression of Uncle 13, Chen Daoxian heaved a sigh of relief. He was not afraid that the Taoist cultivator would oppose him, and in fact no Taoist cultivator dared to oppose his decision. Chen Daoxuan's only concern was that Uncle 13 did not support his decision. If Chen Xianhe objected, and he himself was the patriarch of the family, Chen Daoxian would not be able to carry out the department management system. Since it is a departmental management system, in the future, various things in the family will be divided into specific departments for management. Chen Daoxian paused. Now our Chen family has the following items in total. The first is the management of ordinary mortals in the family. This part of the work was originally in charge of Chongping County Magistrate Chen Ji, but in the future, I will hand over this work to the cultivators of the family. I call it the People's Livelihood Department, and the manager is the Minister of People's Livelihood. In addition to the management of the family mortals, the more important part is naturally the management of the family monks. When it comes to the management of the family monks, everyone raised their spirits. Everyone is a monk. They may not be interested in managing ordinary people, but they obviously have a lot of interest in managing family monks. See, Chen Daoxian said with a smile, for any cultivation force, education is the top priority, and it is not an exaggeration to say that it is the foundation of a cultivation force. Therefore, the second department of the family, I call it the Ministry of Education, is managed by the Minister of Education, responsible for coordinating the education of the family's immortal seedlings. The third department is the Ministry of Commerce, which manages the transactions between monks within the family's sphere of influence. The fourth department is the Ministry of Foreign Trade, which manages transactions between families and external forces. The fifth department is the Ministry of Industry, which is responsible for coordinating the production of family instruments, medicinal herbs, and magic talismans. The 6th department is the Ministry of Agriculture, which is responsible for coordinating the development of family spiritual fields and the cultivation of spiritual medicines. The 7th department is the Lingmai Management Department, referred to as the Lingguan Department, which is responsible for the management of the family spirit vessels, including the cultivation, promotion, and maintenance of the spirit vessels. The 8th department is the Legal Department, which is responsible for judging cultivators who violate the clan law within the sphere of influence of the clan. The 9th department is the Police Department, which is responsible for arresting monks who violate the law within the family sphere of influence. The 10th department is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which is responsible for the communication between the family and external forces. Chen Daoxian said 10 departments in one breath. Among them, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Police, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are all empty shelves for the time being. Other departments, except the Ministry of Industry, the Ministry of Foreign Trade, and the Ministry of People's Livelihood, are in full swing for the time being. The Commerce Department, which is responsible for interfamily transactions, is basically useless. What good deals do the 11 chi-refining cultivators have? However, from Chan Daoxuan's simple description, everyone can see that this organizational structure is quite rigorous. Almost all aspects of the family temporarily involved are covered, and the responsibilities are clearly divided. Not at all worried about future bullshit. Chen Xianhe on the side seemed to have discovered the problem and asked, Daoxian, do the so-called Legal Affairs Department and Police Department you set up have conflicting powers? As far as I know, all major families have adopted law enforcement teams to arrest and try illegal monks. Uncle 13, you are right, these two departments do restrict each other's powers, but this is what I did on purpose. He paused. As you all know, the law enforcement team is the most important department to maintain the internal stability of the family. But at the same time, its power is too great. It combines the power of arrest and trial. If the leader of the law enforcement team or its internal members bend the law for personal gain, how much harm will it bring to the family? Hear this. Chen Xianhe was silent. Although he is not as open-minded as Chen Daoxian, who is a transmigrant, he is not stupid. How could he not know the situation Chen Daoxian mentioned? Just like the law enforcement team of the Zhou family, it is a department that even the cultivators of the Zhou family are afraid of. If you say you are arrested, you will be arrested, and you will be sentenced how you want to be sentenced. Basically, outsiders have no right to interfere at all, except for a few top bigwigs in the Zhou family. This is also the reason why Chen Daoxian shivered with fright when he met a loose cultivator named Zhang San, when he first went to the scattered cultivator city. In this way, over time, the family cultivator will definitely feel resentment towards this law enforcement team, which will affect the internal stability of the family. This is what Chen Daoxian does not want to see. Chapter 112. Looking at the dazed expressions on the faces of the monks present, Chen Daoxian said with a smile, of course some of the departments I divided don't even have specific things, and there are still some things in the family's future, and there are no new departments, such as the family's monk army, the financial department, the taxation department, and so on. Most of the departments I have divided will have to wait until the monks of the Fuzi generation have grown up before manpower can be formed. He paused, then continued, but there is one department that needs to be established imminently, and that is the Ministry of Education. Speaking of which, Chen Daoxuan's expression became serious. Everyone also recovered their spirits. Just now, Chen Daoxian was bombarding wildly, and everyone was a little overwhelmed. Now when it comes to the Ministry of Education alone, everyone finally relaxes. The Ministry of Education, according to what the young patriarch said, is clanology. It seems that everyone's meaning can be seen from everyone's expressions. Chen Daoxian pursed his lips and said with a smile, don't think that the education department refers to the school that is being built in the spiritual vein of my Chen family, then it is a big mistake. Precisely. In the future, all the schools in my Chen family will be managed by the Ministry of Education, but the Ministry of Education does not only refer to the Chongping No. 1 Xiuxian Primary School. In fact, you can also see from the name of the clan Chongping No. 1 Xiuxian Primary School, since there is a first, then there will be a second, a third, and a fourth in the future. Since there are primary schools, There will also be middle schools and universities in the future. Seeing that everyone was confused again, Chan Daoxian coughed and said, "Of course, the only institution directly under the jurisdiction of the Education Department is Chongping No. 1 Xiuxian Primary School." Hear this. Chan Xianhe laughed, only when Chan Daoxian was bragging about drawing a big cake again. The cultivators of the Taoist generation looked like they were beaten with blood, and they were all attracted by the grand scene of the family depicted by Chan Daoxian. Military heart is available. Seeing everyone's state, Chan Daoxian nodded with satisfaction. The first dilemma facing our ethnology is the shortage of teachers. Now I, the cultivator of the Chun family, and Chan Daochuan, who is still in Guang'an, have only 11 people. This person must not only satisfy the production work of Feijian factory, but also take into account the educational work of clanology. Therefore, in the next few years you may be very busy and you need to be mentally prepared. Heard. Everyone stood up one after another and said loudly, "I am willing to go through fire and water for the family." Seeing everyone's attitude, Chan Daoxian was overjoyed and stretched out his hand. "Sit down, all sit down." Seeing this scene, he even felt a little guilty for cutting down the resources of those Taoist monks with poor qualifications. But soon, this guilt was ruthlessly abandoned by him. Because Chan Daoxian is clear, as the patriarch of a family, the most taboo is the benevolence of women. Chan Daoxian can break the rules for the monks of the Taoist generation today. Will he open the back door for the monks of the blessing generation in the future? Will it be given to the cultivators of the Zizi generation in the future? As a result, the family is in danger. Even more terrifying. As the leader of the clan, Chan Daoxian is a role model for the clan in his words and deeds. If he takes the lead in bending the law for personal gain, the clansmen will surely follow suit. The so-called upper beam is not right and the lower beam is crooked, and this is what he is saying. By then, the family collapse would be instantaneous. Even if Chen Daoxuan's strength is tyrannical, he can suppress all opposition and reorganize the family. The Chun family will inevitably suffer a great loss of vitality, and even collapse. Wait until everyone is seated. Chen Daoxuan's voice became serious again. Next, I will talk about the teacher of ethnic studies. He paused. I plan to divide clanology into a professional division according to the various inheritances that the family has. It is temporarily divided into refining class, alchemy class, talisman-making class and kendo class. The first year of primary school is mainly a hodgepodge of learning, and all professional basic schools teach a little. In the second year, they will be divided into classes according to the professional achievements of the monks of the Fuzi generation. But now there is a problem. Our weapon refining class and kendo class can temporarily be taught by me, but there is no teacher in the alchemy class and the talisman class. Speaking of which, Chen Daoxian glanced at everyone. Seeing this scene, the other Taoist monks also retreated a little. When it comes to refining tools, they are somewhat confident. After all, they have been refining flying swords day and night for more than a year. After refining so many flying swords, even a person with poor talent will thoroughly understand the basic pattern of the first-order magic weapon. At least the rookie who doesn't know anything about the professor has no problem at all. But making talismans in alchemy, it is difficult for them. Although they knew that since Chan Daoxian said so, it proved that there must be a related inheritance in the family. But whether it is alchemy or talisman making, which one is easy to learn? In particular, alchemy, which is known as the three major difficulties in the world of immortality, along with the refining of weapons and formations. Seeing the crowd back down, Chen Daoxian frowned slightly, and when he was about to call his name in person, Chen Daochu and Chen Dalian stood up at the same time. Why are you standing up? When Chen Daochu saw Chen Dalian stand up, he was surprised. Can you stand up? Can't I stand up? Chen Dalian glared at Chen Daochu without showing weakness, then turned her head and said, Young patriarch, I want to learn alchemy. Oh! A smile appeared on Chen Daoxuan's face. How come you are thinking about learning alchemy? Young patriarch, after this year of refining flying swords, I found that I have no interest in refining weapons, and the progress of learning refining tools is almost the slowest among the many Taoist monks. Speaking of this, Chen Daolian's voice was a little low. So, if I want to learn alchemy, it's not like my alchemy talent is as bad as the alchemy talent, right? Hearing this sentence, Chen Daoxian was speechless for a while. This is the disadvantage of rushing ducks to the shelves without testing the talents of the Taoist monks. However, in order to increase the output of the Hongyin Feijian factory, there was no way to do it. Who made Chen Daochu and Chen Daolian the oldest group of Taoist monks? It's not that Chen Daoxian was mad at that time and caught a 5-year-old child and stuffed it into the factory. You sit down first and learn about alchemy, and we will discuss it in detail after our clan meeting. Chen Daolian nodded obediently and sat down. Done. Chen Daoxian looked at Chen Daochu again, frowned and said, "Why are you standing up again?" Chen Daochu felt a little nervous inexplicably, but he still dared to say, "I feel that I am becoming more and more comfortable in refining weapons. I hope to become a refining teacher in the clan school." Didn't I say it? Oh, go to the trainer. With your level of a 3-legged cat, what can you teach? Chen Daoxian said angrily. But, Chen Daochu held back for a long time and said, "But you are so busy, young patriarch, and there are too many things in the family waiting for you to deal with. If you teach the kendo class and the refining class, I'm afraid you will be too busy. I want to help you." Speaking of the end, Chen Daochu's voice was barely audible. Hearing this, Chen Daoxuan's inner softness seemed to be touched. After a long time, Chen Daoxian nodded and said, "Okay, then add you and I will teach the talisman class." So far, the first batch of teachers for Chongping No. 1 Xiuxian Primary School has been determined. Chapter 113. The clan will end. All the cultivators of the Taoist generation left Chen Daoxuan's courtyard with mixed feelings, except for Chen Daolian, who was quietly waiting by the side. "You go outside and wait for me for a while, and I have a few words with the old patriarch," Chen Daoxian ordered. "Okay." Chen Daolian nodded. Watching Chen Daolian leave the courtyard gate, Chen Xianhe turned his head to look at Chen Daoxian and said, "What you said just now, is it true or false that you will form an army of family monks in the future?" The monks of the Taoist generation may not have understood the deep meaning of the words that Chen Daoxian passed by. But Chen Xianhe understood. The monks are a group of people with extraordinary power. Why separate the military from it? Since there is an army of family monks, it means that another part of the monks is a non-combat sequence. Chen Xianhe is a little confused about what Chen Daoxian is going to do now, but it always felt like he was going to make a big show. Because of the mention of the monk army, Chen Xianhe couldn't help but think of the monk army in Zenangwan more than 50 years ago. Only, Chen Xianhe felt that the monk army mentioned by Chen Daoxian was not necessarily the same as the monk army at Zenangwan. Indulge for a moment. Chen Daoxian opened his mouth and said, "Uncle 13, are you worried that in the future, I will bring my family's cultivator army to the battlefield of Izumo? As long as you know." Speaking, Chen Xianhe sighed. Back then, all the monks of the immortal family were blinded by the huge benefits of the Izumo country's battlefield, so much so that they put all the monks in the family into it. It is precisely because of this that my entire Chen family was almost destroyed. Speaking of the 12 monks of the Xianzi generation who died in Zenangwan, even after more than 50 years, Chen Xianhe still couldn't let go. "Daoxian, I know that with the current development speed of the Chen family, you will definitely set foot on the battlefield of Izumo in the future, but you have to promise me that no matter what, you can't put all the power of the family into it. Reserve." Chen Xianhe said, staring at him intently. "Okay, I promise you." Chen Daoxian nodded. Hearing this, Chen Xianhe finally breathed a sigh of relief. Instead, Chen Daoxian became puzzled. "Uncle 13, how do you know that my Chen family will definitely be on the Izumo battlefield in the future?" Hear this. Chen Xianhe laughed. "The matter of going to the Izumo country battlefield, the small family may still temporarily escape, but the big family is difficult to avoid." "You mean, Qianyuan Jianzong forced the big family to go to the battlefield?" Chen Daoxian said in surprise. "It's not true." Chen Xianhe shook his head. On the one hand, there are many big families in the battlefield of Izumo that cannot give up their interests, which can quickly help cultivators grow up. On the other hand, after more than 400 years of war, what do you think about our relationship with Izumo and the Xianqing Dao alliance behind it? Never die. After thinking for a long time, Chen Daoxian used this word to describe it. "That's right, it's immortal," Chen Xianhe said with emotion. "Since this is the case, why are the big families on the battlefield of Izumo? Can't you see through it?" Under the cover of the nest there is no complete egg. Unconsciously, the fate of Wan Xinghai loose cultivator and the major immortal clans has long been tied to Qinyuan sword sect. If Wan Xinghai lost the war with Izumo, the Xianqing Dao League would counterattack Wan Xinghai. What kind of tragic scene will it be? Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian couldn't help shivering. No wonder. No wonder Wan Xinghai's major families are increasingly supporting this war. Not only interests, because the major families have also understood that they and Izumo have long been in an endless relationship. Both sides must have one side completely down. Do you expect Izumo Kingdom to be kind to the major immortal families in Wan Xinghai after defeating Qinyuan sword sect? Thinking about the slaves of Izumo who were arrested by the major immortal clans, no one felt that the other party could let them go. Anyone who holds such a fluke mentality is either stupid or bad. Chat for a while. Chen Daoxian watched Chen Xianhe drive away, and then said, "Come in, moment." Chen Dalian Shiren walked in. He looked at the slim girl standing in front of him. Chen Daoxian could still see a trace of the timid appearance in her eyebrows when she was selected from among the many Chen children. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian's mouth couldn't help but evoke a smile. "Daolian, have you figured it out?" "Young patriarch, I've thought about it." Chen Daolian's eyes were firm. Chen Daoxian nodded. "Learning alchemy is not an easy task, so let's do it. You will all follow me to learn alchemy for the next 2 years, and the work in the Feijian factory will stop temporarily." Hearing this, Chen Daolian's pretty face was full of anxiety and said, "Young patriarch, how can this be done? Chen Daochu left the factory and wanted to continue learning the refining with you. I also left the factory, so there are only 3 people left in the factory? What happened to the 3? Just let them work longer hours. As I said, in the next few years, everyone in the Daozi generation will have a hard time. Do you think I am joking?" "Daolian dare not." Chen Daolian lowered her head. Chen Daoxian sighed and said, "Don't worry, they won't work hard for 2 years. And the youngest Taoist monk is over 6 years old. During this time they will follow Daochu and learn to refine with me. When the clan school starts 2 years later, the monks of the Taoist generation will be able to enter the Feijian factory to work. At that time, the factory's Feijian production will inevitably increase by a large amount." Chen Daoxian didn't forget that in addition to the 5 cultivators working in the factory, there were 4 younger monks. 2 years later, this group of young Taoist monks can also be of great use. As for them entering the factory when they were just over 8 years old, they did not meet the labor standards in Chen Daoxian's cognition, so someone had to take care of them. Anyway, his 8-year-old Chen family entered the factory. After all, which generation of cultivators in the Chen family is not sacrificing for the growth of the family? Chen Xianhe is like this, Chen Daoxian is like this, and even the future monks of the blessing generation are like this. It is through the continuous sacrifice of generations of Chen family cultivators that the Chen family can grow and take off step by step. In the end, Chen Daolian was still reluctant to learn alchemy completely off the job. She proposed to Chen Daoxian that she would go to the Feijian factory to work for 3 hours a day and spend the rest of the time practicing and learning alchemy. Seeing her firm attitude, Chen Daoxian agreed. This moment, he finally knew that the Chen family belonged not only to him, but also to every cultivator of the Chen family. Everyone is working hard for the development and growth of the Chen family. All the clansmen are like this, and the Hicho family is not happy. Think of this. Chen Daoxian couldn't help laughing. He felt more and more that it was a happy and interesting thing to be a patriarch in such a family. Chapter 114. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, half a year has passed. In the courtyard of Lingfu, feeling the sea of Dantian energy in his body that had grown to the limit, Chen Daoxian slowly opened his eyes, and a hint of joy appeared on his face. The 9th level of qi refining has finally broken through. From the age of 16 to the age of 19, it took more than 3 years. Chen Daoxian's cultivation level soared from the 3rd level of qi refining to the 9th level of qi refining, and he was promoted at a rate of almost 2 levels a year. This cultivation speed is no less than that of some tianling and cultivators with slightly less resources. This half year, in addition to teaching Chen Daochu and a group of Taoist monks to refine weapons all day, Chen Daoxian is also teaching Chen Daolian to learn alchemy. Thanks to the ability of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic to store understanding, The second-order alchemy inheritance that was obtained from the female cultivator of the Izumo country has already been mastered by Chen Daoxian. Not only that, in the past 6 months he has also cultivated a first-order spell to the perfect state. The name of this first-order spell is Wind Blade Art. That is, the spell carried by the leopard-shaped puppet beast that Chen Daoxian found in the Mo family library. As the most basic first-order wind attribute spell, Wind Blade is not powerful among all first-order spells. The only advantage is that it is fast, the release speed is fast, and the Wind Blade ballistic speed after release is fast. As for power, Chen Daoxian tested it. The Wind Blade technique of the Perfection realm can't even break through the ice technique in his Spirit Talisman. Not to mention compared to Chen Daoxian's ultimate trick, the sword of chasing the wind and covering the rain. Of course, Chen Daoxian chose to practice this first-order spell, not for its power. Instead, use it to comprehend the pattern of the wind, which can also be called the law of the wind. In the immortal world, the monks divided spells into 9 types according to their attributes: gold, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, light, and darkness. In addition to the basic 5-element spells, spells with the 4 attributes of wind, thunder, light, and darkness are relatively rare. As for spells like ice, it's actually a variant of water spells. If you count the various attribute spells derived from the 5 elements, there are too many types of spells. But no matter what kind of spell it is, if you want to release it, you must comprehend the pattern of the avenues of this spell. That is, the magic Dao pattern that monks often say. Due to professional needs, the talisman must be proficient in various spells and patterns. Therefore, every talisman maker has a high level of attainment in magic. According to what Zhou Mubai said in Kendo Jade Slips, if a cultivator wants to comprehend the meaning of the sword, he must fuse the Tao with the sword. The Dao here refers to the spell Dao pattern. Chen Daoxian had rarely practiced spells before, so he couldn't say how proficient he was with spells. In fact, he knows a little bit about the pattern of the wind, because Yu Fengshu can be classified into the category of wind attribute spells. It contains a part of the wind pattern. This is also the reason why Chen Daoxian chose to practice Wind Blade Art first. He is somewhat of a foundation in this regard. It turns out that his choice was not wrong. After more than a month of epiphany, Chen Daoxian finally cultivated the Wind Blade technique to a perfect state. Although the power of the spell is unsatisfactory, at least his understanding of the wind pattern is much deeper than before. Especially after the last epiphany, he actually found that he had been stuck in the Kendo realm where he had not moved for more than a year, and he had improved again. Chen Daoxian found that with the help of epiphany, the wind pattern was actually slowly integrated into his Kendo, which made his Kendo level steadily improve. This discovery made Chen Daoxian excited. His progress in Kendo before was really fast. So much so that Chen Daoxian had some self-doubt about his Kendo talent after more than a year of lack of progress. Is it because his Kendo talent is so poor that the ability of the Hongming Enlightenment Classic to store understanding cannot help him continue to improve in Kendo? But the last epiphany completely dispelled his doubts. It's not that his Kendo talent is poor, but that he didn't find the right direction. This little trick, if it wasn't for Zhou Mubai's advice from Jiandao Jade Slip, Chen Daoxian didn't know how much time it would take to discover this secret. Every time he thought about it, he felt more and more grateful to Zhou Mubai. To a certain extent, Zhou Mubai had a half-teacher friendship with him. The problem of comprehending sword intent is solved, and Chen Daoxian's cultivation has reached the 9th level of qi refining. Then the next thing placed in front of Chen Daoxian is the foundation. Of course, before establishing the foundation, Chen Daoxian had to complete 3 things. Because he wants to take the legendary road of sword repair. So his preparations can't be overstated. The first, naturally, is to comprehend the sword intent. This point, Chen Daoxian feels that there is no problem. Now that he has found the right direction, the rest is to use the ability of Hongming Enlightenment Daojing to store understanding all the time. The second is to polish the infuriating energy, so that the infuriating energy is pure and mellow, reaching the point where there is no progress. This is what every qi refining cultivator needs to do. In fact, not only cultivators in the qi refining stage but in all cultivation realms, there is a special realm called the Perfection realm. For example, qi refining is complete, foundation building is complete, zifu is complete, and so on. But in fact, consummation is not a new realm, It refers to the cultivator reaching a special state that can break through to the next realm. Essentially, the perfection of qi refining is the 9th level of qi refining. It's just that the 9th level qi refining cultivator's infuriating energy is pure, and there is no way to enter it, and he is ready to build a foundation. The head of the Mo family, who was beheaded by Chen Daoxian, was in this special state. I want to reach this special state from the 9th level of qi refining. Relying on the power of medicinal pills is no longer effective. This was the case with Wei Sihai, the 9th level qi refining cultivator, hired by the Chen family magical item branch. Whether it is the medicinal pills or water spirit beads that assist cultivation, they have no effect on this type of cultivator. Because it is not the spiritual energy that is used to polish the infuriating energy, but the cultivator's water grinding effort bit by bit. According to the different conditions of the monks, it may take a few years at least and even 10 years at most. Come this far. Only Chen Daoxian knew how powerful Zhou Mubai's foundation building was at the age of 21. Because polishing infuriating can't rely on foreign objects. Only by the monk himself. In other words, Zhou Mubai might have reached the 9th level of qi refining when he was less than 15 years old. As for the third thing, it is also the most important thing, or the one thing that Chen Daoxian is least sure of. Build a natal dantian decompressor, or infuriating storage. This half year, Chen Daoxian put a lot of thought into this. I read a lot of ancient books, and I experimented with many kinds of spiritual or materials, but I still couldn't find a material to store infuriating energy. This made Chen Daoxian extremely frustrated. After all, finding this material is only the first step. Only by finding this kind of material can he later develop a special natal magic weapon to store infuriating energy based on this kind of material. However, he is now unable to complete even the first step. Chapter 115. Young Patriarch. Outside Lingfu, a group of figures flew towards Chen Daoxuan's courtyard. Take a closer look. It was Chen Daochu, Chen Dalian, and the young monks of the Taoist generation. Everyone lowered their bodies and respectfully saluted Chen Daoxian. See, Chen Daoxian nodded. Let's start. After finishing speaking, he looked at Chen Dalian and said, go to the alchemy room first, and refine the first order low-grade spirit pill that I taught you yesterday. Yes, young patriarch. Chen Dalian bowed her hands. Then he walked towards the alchemy room in Lingfu. Watching Chen Dalian leave, Chen Daoxian looked at Chen Daochu and the others and said, have you learned the technique of superimposing array patterns that I told you yesterday? Soon. Time is passing little by little in the hard work of everyone. Unconsciously, 3 hours passed. By the time Chen Daochu and the others waved goodbye to Chen Daoxian, it was getting late. Call. Chen Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief. Standing up, he stretched his muscles. The blue scales in the storage bag warmed slightly. Chen Daoxian took the blue scales out of the storage bag. It was a message from Luoli. Chen Daoxuan's expression was a little puzzled. It stands to reason that today is not the day when the Mare people trade with his Chen family. Think about it. Chen Daoxian sank his consciousness into the blue scales. After half a cup of tea, with a strange expression, Chen Daoxian withdrew his consciousness from the blue scales. Invite me to be a guest at Magic Monkey Mountain? Chen Daoxian had a sullen face, thinking about the meaning of the merman's move. But after thinking about it for a long time, I found nothing. Forget it, why do you think so much? Ask her face to face and it's over. Chen Daoxian shook his head with a smile. After 2 years of trading, his relationship with Luoli was no longer just an ordinary trading partner. The relationship between the two was much more harmonious than when they first met. Every time we meet, the two sides have been able to sit down and chat and laugh, just like a close friend. Sequoia Island. Wanghai Pavilion. In the distance, a lonely and slender figure sat on the stone bench of Wanghai Pavilion, which made people feel unbearable and feel pity. Luoli stared at the endless sea, and slapped the sea with her tail in disinterest. While slapping, the small mouth still counts the numbers rhythmically. 3020, 3021. Where did I count? Luoli raised his head blankly, then lowered his head and muttered, forget it, count again. Sudden. Luoli raised his head and saw a white figure flying from the sky in the distance. It was Chen Daoxian. Chen Daoxian lowered his body, smiled and cupped his hands. I'm sorry, Miss Luo has been waiting for a long time. No, I just arrived. Luo Li's pretty face was slightly cramped. After pondering for a moment, Chen Daoxian asked straight to the point. Miss Luo, you just said in the subpoena that you invited me to be a guest in the noble territory. I don't know why. No, nothing, it's just that my dad wants to see you. Your father. The expression on Chen Daoxian's face suddenly became serious. Luo Li's father was a late-stage cultivator of the Z Mansion. Although he was not Zhou Mubai's opponent, he was a figure who could be ranked in the entire Guang'an Mansion. Be honest. Chen Daoxian didn't really want to see this guy. After all, with his Chi-refining cultivator's cultivation base, it was a bit too stressful to meet an alien Zifu cultivator. But to say that this trip will encounter unexpected events. Chen Daoxian really couldn't find any reason for the other party to attack the Chen family. After more than 2 years of trade exchanges, the Mer people are highly dependent on the Chen family in all aspects. It can be said that if something happens to the Chen family, the Mer people are the last thing they want to see. Even for the Chen family, the Mer people are willing to take risks to help. To know. If the aliens dare to intervene in the internal affairs of the human race, they will take the risk of genocide. This point. It was only later that Chen Daoxian learned about it in his communication with Chen Xianhe. Qianyuan Jianzong's suppression of the Wuxia aliens is extremely terrifying. In order to suppress the Wuxia alien race, Qianyuan Jianzong specially established an existence called Zhenhai Temple. Zhenhai Temple may not have a good reputation among the human race monks in Wuxia, but in the underwater world of Wuxia, it is an organization that can make foreign races feel fearful. Especially the Hall Master of Zhenhai Palace. It is the most powerful one in the entire Wanxinghai, and it is also one of the pillars of the entire Wanxinghai. This also explains why did Luo Li's father have obvious fear on his face when he heard about Qianyuan Jianzong. In fact, what he was afraid of was not the Qianyuan sword sect, but the Zhenhai Hall under the Qianyuan sword sect. Seeing the hesitant look on Chen Daoxian's face, Luo Liqiao couldn't help showing a trace of nervousness. She was afraid that Chen Daoxian would refuse, because she doesn't know who else to turn to for help now. Okay. Chen Daoxian nodded slowly, and then he wondered again. It's just that, after all, I have only cultivated in the Qi period, and I don't know the technique of water escape. How can I enter the deep sea world? Hear this. Luo Li smiled sweetly and said, You forgot the innate magical power I used when I sent you home last time? You mean? Yes, the innate magical powers of our merman can allow you to go to the underwater world of Wuxia without using the water escape technique. Speaking of this, Luo Li smiled mysteriously. Trust me, you will absolutely love the deep sea world of 10,000 stars sea to her. Chen Daoxian just wanted to say, what is the deep sea world like? Although Chen Daoxian has never been there in his previous life, he has always seen pictures taken by submarines. It was a cold, dark, dead world. Only special beings can survive in that environment. Luo Li said that he would fall in love with the deep sea world of Wanxinghai. Isn't this nonsense? But Chen Daoxian can also understand. After all, there are shishir in the eyes of lovers, and some people will say that their hometown is not good. Maybe in Luo Li's eyes, the underwater world of Wuxia is like a fairyland? It seemed that he could see the disapproval in Chen Daoxian's eyes. Luo Li covered her mouth and laughed lightly without explaining. Her small expression seemed to be waiting to see Chen Daoxian's joke. For some reason, every time she gets along with Chen Daoxian, she feels a moment of relief. Luo Li felt that perhaps Chen Daoxian was too helpful to their merman. So much so that she herself had a slight dependence on Chen Daoxian. Let's go now, or... Chen Daoxian didn't finish his words. I only felt that my right hand was tight, and then it was spinning for a while and then it fell into the sea freely. Can you say hello first next time? Chen Daoxian said helplessly. Sorry, I'm too excited, I'll pay attention next time. Luo Li smiled and revealed a pair of small tiger teeth. Shaking his head, Chen Daoxian didn't blame the other party anymore. As the two of them went deeper and deeper into the sea, the light coming from overhead became less and less. To the end, Chen Daoxian completely entered a situation where he could not see his fingers. Fortunately, he still has divine consciousness available. The body is covered with a transparent film that fits the skin. It makes him feel neither suffocated nor any pressure from the sea, which is very miraculous. Losing his vision, Chan Daoxuan's sense of touch seemed to become extraordinarily sharp. He could feel the slight warmth emanating from Luo Li's little hand holding him, and it was this slight warmth that gave him some peace of mind in this dark environment. Gradually, Chan Daoxuan's breathing returned to steady. I do not know how long it has been. Luo Li's voice came from Chan Daoxuan's ears again. We are about to enter the shady layer of Wan Xinghai. Shadow layer? Chan Daoxian, who didn't know what to do, asked through voice transmission. Chapter 116. The Underwater World of Wuxia. It is divided into 3 layers in total: the superficial layer, the shady layer, and the Xinghai layer below the shady layer. After passing through these 3 sea areas, you will enter the real Wuxia underwater world. Then the superficial layer. The shady layer is called the real cold and darkness. It is exactly the same as the deep sea world in Chan Daoxuan's previous life. The only difference from the seabed in the previous life is that the depth of Wuxia is really too deep. How fast Luo Li escaped at the foundation building stage. But after diving for a full hour, he didn't even pass through the shady layer. This scene made Chan Daoxian feel a little hairy in his heart. Originally thought that after he became a monk, he was no longer afraid of the mighty power of nature. But at this moment in the shady layer of Wan Xinghai, Chan Daoxian discovered his insignificance again. The so-called cultivator is nothing more than a stronger person. In front of this boundless power of heaven and earth, not to mention the cultivators in the Qi refining period, the foundation building period and the purple palace period, what is it? It seems to feel flustered. Chan Daoxian couldn't help holding Luo Li's little hand back. This action caused Luo Li's body to tremble slightly. But soon, the blushing Luo Li didn't say a word, and gently held Chan Daoxuan's right hand. Along the way, the two of them were all silent, only an inexplicable affection was brewing between them. Sudden, a ray of light appeared in Chan Daoxuan's sight. That is, Chan Daoxian looked at the little stars below, a little overwhelmed. That is the star sea layer of Wuxia. We have passed through the shady layer. Luo Li breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. Obviously, every time I cross the shady layer, even for Luo Li, who lives in the underwater world of Wuxia all the year round, it is a lot of psychological pressure. Star sea layer. At this moment, Chan Daoxian felt that his worldview was smashed to pieces. The underwater world of Wan Xinghai is actually such a magnificent sight. See Chan Daoxuan's shocking and inexplicable look. Luo Li only felt amused for a while. She shook Chan Daoxuan's big hand and said, "Do you know why it's called Wan Xinghai? Just because of it?" Chan Daoxian pointed to the countless stars below like a vast starry sky, and muttered, "Yes, it's because of it." Lori nodded. All the time, Chan Daoxian thought that Wan Xinghai was called Wan Xinghai because the islands on the sea were as numerous as stars in the sky. Did not expect. The underwater world of Wuxia really contains a starry sky. What a nice view. Chan Daoxian couldn't help but said. It's beautiful, but it's also dangerous. Luo Li looked at the picture in front of her and responded, "Danger." Chan Daoxian turned his head, somewhat unclear. Compared to your human world, the underwater world of Wan Xinghai is extremely cruel. Sometimes I envy your human world for having the power of Qianyuan sword sect. Envious. Chan Daoxian thought about it carefully, and then he understood the meaning of Luo Li's words. For any family cultivator who has the will to grow the family, Qianyuan Jianzong is a lingering cloud over their heads. But for loose cultivators and small family cultivators, as well as ordinary people living in Wan Xinghai, Qianyuan Jianzong at least gave them the most basic survival guarantee. Take Guang'an Prefecture as an example. Even if the Chun family was so weak at the beginning, they were not worried that other families would come to their family property and destroy the Chun family's Manchu family, relying on the shock and deterrence of Qianyuan Jianzong. There is also the existence of Zhenhai Hall. If it wasn't for Zhenhai Hall's suppression of alien races in the Wuxia underwater world, all races on the bottom of the sea would not dare to make any changes. It is unknown how many mortal cultivators are killed or injured every year only by monster attacks. The monster attack here did not refer to the monster rebellion in Chongping County that year. The monster chaos in Chongping County was all about monsters like tiger eye fish that didn't reach the rank. This kind of monster that does not enter the rank is not so much a monster but a beast. For this kind of beast, Qianyuan Jianzong has no good way to manage it, because there are too many of them in the Wuxia, and no matter how you kill them they won't be afraid. Moreover, the reproduction rate of these monsters that are not in the rank is astonishing. Qianyuan Jianzong and the major families can only take regular cleaning methods to control the number of these non-grade monsters. Continue to dive with the two figures. Chun Daoxian finally got close to these stars. As they approached, Chun Daoxian found that these stars had no real substance, like clusters of starlight floating in the deep-sea world. Among these stars they are as bright as the rising sun, small but like dust visible in a few steps. After careful counting, Chun Daoxian found that there were a total of 7 stars as bright as the rising sun. It is these stars that illuminate the entire underwater world as bright as day. Into the sea of stars, Chun Daoxian seemed to have come to a dreamy land, and he found that as he got closer to the underwater world, the aura here seemed to become more and more intense. You said that the spiritual energy is strong? Luoli said shyly. That's because we are not proficient in formations, and we cannot block the spiritual energy of the spiritual meridians with formations. Hearing this, Chun Daoxian didn't know how to respond. Did not expect. The cultivation environment that one Xinghai loose cultivators dream of is actually not on land, but in the deep sea. It's a pity that the loose cultivators will never be able to enter the deep sea world to practice. Loose cultivators with low cultivation bases simply cannot enter here. Even in the foundation establishment period, because of the constant consumption of the water escape technique, it is impossible to practice here. I want to practice in the underwater world of Wuxia without too much influence. Human race cultivators at least have to reach the golden core cultivation base to be possible. And when it comes to Jindan cultivation base, not to mention that you can get more and better resources on the battlefield of Izumo. Only the high-level spiritual veins of the Wuxia underwater world are almost all controlled by powerful aliens. It made Jindan cultivators stay away, because if you want to win these high-level spiritual veins, you must kill all the alien races that occupy the spiritual veins. So count. It's not as good as going to the battlefield of Izumo. At least not alone. Say it again. The underwater world of Wan Xinghai is the basic plan of Qianyuan Jianzong. How can Jindan cultivator not even have this vision? More than an hour later, the two finally crossed the vast star sea layer. Really came to the underwater world of Wuxia. Luoli stood on a high mountain under the sea. After identifying the direction, he took Chun Daoxian's hand and flew in the direction of Demon Ape Mountain. Along the way, Luoli was adept at avoiding the spiritual veins occupied by the major alien races. It flew for several hours. The two finally came to the realm of the Magic Monkey Mountain. As a third-order spiritual vein, Magic Ape Mountain covers an extremely wide area, reaching a radius of thousands of miles. On the main vein of Magic Monkey Mountain, one by one cave houses were opened up by the people of the Merman tribe. On another mountain, a large number of male mermen are going in and out of the mine. Obviously, they are mining for the Chun family. Overlook. Luoli stretched out his finger, pointed to the largest cave on the main vein, and said, "That's my father's cave." Chapter 117. Calm down. The two flew towards the cave house of the Merman clan chief. Moment. The figures of the two fell in front of Luoli's father's cave. Let's go. Luoli turned around and smiled at Chun Daoxian. Chun Daoxian nodded and followed behind him. Dad, look who I invited. As soon as he entered the cave, Luoli said cheerfully. Chun Daoxian looked around at the furnishings in the cave. Compared with the cave mansion of the human cultivator, the cave mansion of the merman seems to have a different style. Above the cave, dotted with large and small water spirit beads, it looks like the top of the starry sky. Chun Daoxian saw the Merman clan chief for the second time in the hall of the cave mansion. Compared with the first time he saw him, the state of the Merman clan chief does not seem to be very good at the moment. Luo Shuyuan raised his head, his face pale. Wrapped in a large layer of brocade clothes from the outside, it seems a little weak. You came. Luo Ziyuan's voice was horribly hoarse, as if there was only one breath left. But Chun Daoxian knew that even if the other party was seriously injured, as a late-stage cultivator of the Purple Mansion, he could never guess. Senior, you are. Luo Shuan looked up at Luo Li, waved his hand and said, Liar, you go out first. Yes, Dad. There was a trace of reluctance in Luo Li's eyes. She was very worried about her father's injury, but there was no good way to do it. According to the illustrations provided by Chan Daoxian, she found a lot of elixir to treat her injuries at the bottom of the sea, but none of them had any effect on her father's injuries. Watching Luo Li leave, Luo Shuan looked at Chan Daoxian deeply and said, Boy, we meet again. Chan Daoxian cupped his hands and did not speak. Luo Shuan tore off his large robe and said to himself, As you can see, I won't live long. I see. On Luo Ziyuan's chest, the wound Zhou Mubai caused him not only did not heal, but instead became more serious. A terrifying sword energy hovered over the opening in Luo Ziyuan's chest. Moreover, Chan Daoxian also saw that this sword energy, while fighting against Luo Ziyuan's mana, was devouring the opponent's mana and growing. This made Luo Shuan unable to erase this sword energy at all. More than 3 years of entanglement let Luo Shuan almost run out of fuel. 3 years ago, in order to attack the Magic Monkey Mountain, it completely lost control, and it turned out to be what it is now. Luo Shuan laughed at himself and put on his robe again. Do you know why I want to see you? Junior doesn't know, please ask Senior to make it clear. Chen Daoxian arched his hands. As for Luo Ziyuan's injury, he who has accepted the inheritance of Zhou Mubai's swordsmanship is more aware than Luo Shuan himself. This is the damage left by sword intent. This kind of injury is extremely difficult to heal, unless you let Jian Xiu use his own sword intent to wipe out this sword energy, or let Jindan Cultivator use more advanced mana to wipe it out bit by bit. Otherwise, if the sword qi is not removed, even if the wound is cured by taking the elixir, the physical body will continue to be destroyed by the sword qi. This is also the horror of Jian Xiu. In the past 3 years, you and I have traded frequently. Whether it's our weapons, Lingmi, or even the clothes on my clan, it all depends on your Chun family's supply. Luo Shuyuan paused. What's even more ridiculous is that my family actually used the contribution points of your Chun family. Boy, you plan to bring our family under your command and become a vassal of your Chun family. Heard. Chun Daoxuan's heart was tight, but he had no fear on his face and said righteously, Senior, what is the meaning of this? The transactions between you and me are all for each other's interests. If the senior feels that it is inappropriate to use my Chun family's contribution point, you can exchange it for the spirit stone. Don't be in a hurry to argue, you and I know what the facts are. Luo Shuyuan sighed, let me ask you, do you really like our merman? Chen Daoxian didn't know what the other party meant, and fell silent for a while. Seeing that Chen Daoxian did not speak, Luo Ziyuan's eyes became misty. You know, why didn't I deal with the Yang family or the Wu family at the beginning, but did I find a small family like your Chen family? The younger generation doesn't know. Chen Daoxian shook his head. He has always been very suspicious about this matter. On the surface, whether the mermen are looking for cooperation with the Yang family or the Wu family, they are better than looking for his Chen family. After all, the Yang, Wu, and Zhao families are much stronger than the Chen family, because these families have their own vassal races, and I, the Mare people, don't want to be someone else's vassal. Luo Xiu said far and quietly. Subordinate race? This was the first time he had heard of the secrets of the Guang'an house clan, and he couldn't help but feel very curious for a while. That's right. For example, the purple electric snapping turtles of the Yang family and the clear water monkeys of the Wu family are all their vassal races. The Zhou family also has a vassal race. It is said to be a Jindan race, but I don't know which race it is. Luo Shuyuan said, shaking his head, the vassal race, said to be a vassal, is actually a dog raised by the major families. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian raised an uproar in his heart. He knew that the Wan Xinghai Shouxian clan had a profound background, but he did not expect it to be so profound. In addition to the strength of his own people, he also has a tentacle of interest in the underwater world of Wangxinghai. Actually, think about it. No one in this world is a fool, especially these big families. What the Chun family can think of, how can other families not think of it? Besides, trading with foreign races can harvest a lot of wealth in the underwater world of Wangxinghai. And it is a strange thing that the major immortal clans do not get involved. As for the Chun family who didn't know about it before, that was because the Chun family had no access to this level at all. Think of this. Chen Daoxian said again. Since your Mer people have been arrested by the Zhou family, why don't you choose to become their vassals? In this way, it is at least better than the clansmen being slaves of the Zhou family. Who knows to hear this? Luo Xuan said quietly, slaves are still of the same clan, but vassals are not. I don't know what seniors mean. Chen Daoxian frowned, very puzzled. Luo Xuan did not answer this question but instead asked, do you know the origin of my Mer people? Hearing this, Chen Daoxian shook his head. Although it was rumored that the merman was a branch of the ancient human race, how could he say such unconfirmed rumors? At least on the surface, the racial characteristics of the human race and the merman race are obvious. One has legs and the other has fishtails. In ancient times, monsters were the overlords of this world, and humans were just the rations of monsters. At that time, there were huge differences between the human race in order to survive. One side advocates fighting the monster to the end, while the other side advocates fleeing to the deep sea to survive. Countless years have passed. The human race who chose to fight the monster to the end defeated the monster and became the master of this world. The human race that chose to flee to the deep sea gradually lost its human characteristics and grew a fish tail. But they found that there are also countless monsters in the deep sea world, and as the human race on the land wins, more and more monster races flee to the deep sea, so that this human race is difficult to reproduce, and the race is getting smaller and smaller. Speaking of which, Luo Xuan raised his head. That's right, this branch of the ancient human race is the ancestor of our mermaid race. Between you and me, we are of the same race. Who knows that Chen Daoxuan's expression did not change at all when he heard this, but instead glanced at the other side's fish tail. Seemingly stimulated by Chen Daoxuan's eyes, Luo Xuan suddenly became excited. Yes, we escaped back then. But our ancestors just wanted to survive. They just wanted to preserve a trace of blood for the human race. Our ancestors just wanted to live, they just didn't want to die. What is wrong with us? Whoa, whoa, whoa. After speaking, Luo Xuan coughed violently. Sorry, I don't think I'm the same race as your merman. Chen Daoxian said coldly. This sentence. It seemed that the deepest scar in Luo Ziyuan's heart was torn apart, making him a dignified cultivator of the late period of the Purple Mansion, grief-stricken, covering his face and weeping. Different choices create different racial destinies. One of the two human races became the ruler of this world. On the other hand, even the most basic reproduction and survival have become extremely difficult. Prejudice. The side that now dominates the world no longer thinks that the merman is a branch of the human race that is of the same origin as theirs. Luo Xuan thought of when he went to attack Guang'an Mansion. Those loose cultivators looked at themselves. Just like seeing some kind of novel monster, his eyes are full of jokes. Near the moment of death, Luo Xiu couldn't help but feel sad. If it was back then, their ancestors did not choose to flee to the deep sea, but chose to fight side by side with the human race on land. How nice. A long time. Luo Xuan calmed down, raised his head and said, we, the mermaid race, are willing to be your vassal of the Chen family. Why? Chen Daoxian was very puzzled. Although the Chen family is thriving now, with so many big families in Guang'an Prefecture, no matter which one they choose, it is better than choosing the Chen family. Luo Ziyuan's eyes dimmed. Because of liar. Miss Luo. Chen Daoxian frowned, even more puzzled. Because she told me that only you look at her like you're looking at a monster. Luo Shuyuan increased his tone again. We are not monsters, let alone aliens, we are humans. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian took a deep breath and nodded. Okay. On behalf of the Chen family, I accept the allegiance of your merman. It has always been Chen Daoxuan's dream to get the allegiance of the merman. But somehow, he didn't feel excited at the moment. Yes, just a hint of sadness. Sometimes one wrong step can be irreversible. Luo Xuan straightened his body, then knelt down in front of Chen Daoxian and made a contract in his mouth. I, the head of the Merman clan Luo Xuan, hereby swear on behalf of all the members of the Merman clan, from today onwards, allegiance to the Chen family, until death to rest. I, Chen Daoxian, the patriarch of the Chen clan, accept the allegiance of the Mer people on my behalf of the Chen clan. In midair, an invisible contract was formed between the two. The covenant of racial affiliation. This moment, he felt that he had a faint sense of every member of the Merman clan. Although this sense of induction can't do anything to the people of the Merman clan, It can detect whether the other party is loyal to him. That's what the race affiliation pact does. Watching Chen Daoxian leave his cave, Luo Xuan sighed silently. Liar, I hope Dad's choice this time is correct. Chapter 118. Magic Ape Mountains. Follow the induction of the attached contract. Chen Daoxian quickly found Luo Li's location. Far away, Luo Li was lying on a hill full of vegetation and seaweed, with Bainan's hands folded, resting on the back of his head, staring at the huge stars in the Xinghai layer, dazed. What are you thinking about? Silently, Chen Daoxian sat beside her. When I was a child, I used to lie on a rock and watch the stars. At that time, I asked my mother why our people were always fleeing and fighting. My mother told me that it was for survival. A line of clear tears rolled down her cheeks. I asked my mother, what is the meaning of life? She told me just like she gave birth to me, I will give birth to a smaller me in the future, and this is the meaning of survival. Later my mother was gone. Speaking of which, Luo Li was sobbing. Chen Daoxian looked at her, hesitated, and finally put his hand on her shoulder gently, comforting. Everything will pass. The human race has survived so much difficulty in the ancient times. I believe that your merman will also usher in a bright day. Hearing this, Luo Li raised his head, staring at Chen Daoxian's eyes with a pair of slightly reddish eyes, and said, will he die? Can. Chen Daoxian nodded, then looked at the starry sky. Everyone dies. These words seemed to comfort Luo Li, and they seemed to comfort himself. Cried for a long time. Luo Li was tired from crying and actually fell asleep in Chen Daoxian's arms. Looking at her pear blossom with rain, Chen Daoxian felt a hint of pity in his heart. The Chen family is struggling, but everyone knows that the life of the Chen family is the dream of the merman living in the deep sea world. An hour later, Luo Li woke up faintly, found himself lying in Chen Daoxian's arms. His pretty face could not help blushing slightly, but then he thought of something and his face became pale again. As the signer of the subordinate contract, Luo Li could feel the faint connection between her and Chen Daoxian. Master! Master! She shouted the word awkwardly. Chen Daoxian shook his head. You don't have to, just call me by my name. Who knows? Luo Li's face is very firm. Shook his head and said, the rituals cannot be broken, and the rules cannot be broken. Since my merman is a subordinate race of the Chen family, from today onwards, you will be my master. Before that, though, I would like to have one last slap in the face. Said, she looked at Chen Daoxian with a hint of expectation. Okay. Although he didn't know what Luo Li meant when he said presumptuous, he couldn't bear to reject this girl with a tragic fate. Seeing that Chen Daoxian did not reject her, Luo Li happily grabbed Chen Daoxian's right hand and flew in one direction. You come with me. Seeing her flamboyant appearance, Chen Daoxian laughed dumbly. It's really a temperament that can't be changed no matter what. You slow down. Okay, right ahead. Not for a while. The two came to a huge basin in the Magic Monkey Mountain. This is equivalent to the plain of the underwater world. On this plain there are actually blooming strange lotus flowers. These lotus flowers are white in appearance. Under the light of the stars, they glow with a strange brilliance and are very beautiful. Even Chen Daoxian had to sigh at the rarity of this beauty. Seeing that Chen Daoxian was shocked by the beauty in front of him, Luo Li smiled and said, this is a kind of spiritual plant unique to the underwater world of Wuxia. We call it the lotus of good fortune, but unfortunately it was not given to me by you. The elixir in the picture book. Speaking of which, Luo Li's pretty face showed a hint of regret. Lingji. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian's heart moved slightly. Any kind of undiscovered spiritual plant has a huge effect. The difference is only whether this function has been developed by the monks. This is a sentence recorded in the Inheritance of Alchemy, left by the female cultivator of Izumo. Chen Daoxian agreed. There are no useless spiritual plants. Only spiritual plants that have not found a specific usage. It is obviously a white lotus. Why is it called the lotus of creation? Chen Daoxian looked at Luo Li with a strange expression and asked. You watch. Luo Li smiled mysteriously. The next moment, she suddenly flew to the center of the lotus ocean, held up a stream of true essence in her right hand, and then threw the true essence into the air. Suddenly, countless fine true essences were scattered towards the lotus on the ground. The white lotus of good fortune came into contact with Luo Li's true essence. Suddenly exudes a different kind of brilliance. For a while, various brilliance pervades, reflecting the starlight under the starry sky, setting off Luo Li like a goddess under the moon. Looked at this stunning sight, Chen Daoxian only felt that his heart was touched fiercely. Under the sky, the two looked at each other silently, and Luo Li didn't say those words after all. What a nice view, Chen Daoxian said with emotion. What did you say? I said so beautiful. Luo Li smiled happily like a child. Just when Luo Li was swaying his true essence, Chen Daoxian discovered that the lotus of fortune was different. Chen Daoxian discovered that this lotus of good fortune was actually absorbing Luo Li's true essence. This discovery made Chen Daoxian feel a surge of ecstasy. What's wrong with you? Seeing that Chen Daoxian's face changed from a smile to ecstasy, Luo Li stopped what he was doing and flew towards Chen Daoxian. As Luo Li stopped swaying his true essence, the lotus of creation did not lose its luster immediately, but still showed a radiant appearance. Fine. Chen Daoxian stared at one of the lotus of good fortune and observed it carefully. Luo Li, let me ask you, can this lotus of creation absorb your true essence? That's right. It's a pity that this kind of spiritual plant has no effect other than absorbing the monk's true essence. The real essence absorbed by it will be slowly absorbed by itself after being stored for a period of time, turning it into nutrients for growth. Luo Li said as a matter of course. Nothing works. Hearing Luo Li's comment, Chen Daoxian's mouth twitched fiercely. Luo Li actually said that this thing is useless. Taking a deep breath, Chen Daoxian calmed down his excitement. Then he pulled out a lotus of good fortune. What surprised Chen Daoxian was that this lotus of good fortune was not cut off by him. You must know that in addition to being a qi refining cultivator, Chen Daoxian also practiced body refining exercises. He has the terrifying power to crush the Conglong with 1 foot. Now even a lotus flower can be pulled out. See you. Chen Daoxian became more interested in this spiritual plant. I saw him take out the flying snow sword and cut off the rhizome of the lotus of fortune with 1 sword. Holding this lotus of good fortune in his hand, Chen Daoxian found that it had not returned to its original white color. Every time you inject real essence into it, how long does it take for the real essence to escape? Who knows? Luo Li shook his head and said, it won't escape, it will only be absorbed by it. What if I don't let it absorb? Chen Daoxian's voice faintly trembled. Luo Li tilted his little head and said timidly, then it is there. Heard this. Chen Daoxian took Luo Li into his arms, gave her a kiss on her pretty face, and said excitedly, I love you so much. Chapter 119. Miss Luo walks slowly. Chen Daoxian waved to Luo Li, who knew that the other party jumped directly into the sea and ignored him. Embarrassed, he withdrew his right hand. Chen Daoxian knew in his heart that he had just played a rogue once, and Luo Li was angry with him. His previous actions in the underwater world, not to mention in this relatively conservative world, even in his previous life, were enough for him to go in and squat for 7 days. Overwhelmed, Chen Daoxian finally understood the meaning of the word. But thinking of the bunch of lotus of creation in his storage bag, he couldn't care about anything at the moment. After identifying the direction, Chen Daoxian flew in the direction of Shuanghu Island. Wait until Chen Daoxian returns to Shuanghu Island again. It's already late at night. Fly back to his spiritual house alone. Come to his exclusive refining room. Chen Daoxian couldn't wait to take out the lotus of fortune from the storage bag. In the underwater world before, Chen Daoxian didn't have time to observe carefully. Now, after returning to Shuanghu Island, Chen Daoxian found that there were some stars glowing on the white lotus of good fortune. See this little bit of starlight? Chen Daoxian couldn't help but think of the Xinghai layer of the Wuxia underwater world. The magnificent and unusual starry sky under the sea made Chen Daoxian feel extremely shocked. Throw out the distracting thoughts in your mind. Chen Daoxian picked up a lotus of creation. The Dantian pressure reducer he envisaged must be built according to the method of costing the magic weapon. Compared with ordinary instruments, the creation of natal instruments is just one more special step to fuse the master's blood essence. Just complete this special step. There is not much difference between ordinary magic tools and natal magic tools. Of course, fusion of blood essence is not an easy task. and the instrument must be adjusted according to the specific situation of the owner of the instrument to adapt to the fusion of essence and blood. Therefore, the craftsman who creates the natal magic tool must know everything about the owner of the natal magic tool. As an artifact refiner, Chen Daoxian, of course, made it easy for him to create his own magical artifact. Now the main material for refining the Dantian pressure reducer has been found. The rest is how to design this magic weapon. For this matter, Chen Daoxian, who has already created the magic tool of the Rongling furnace, is not inexperienced. He immediately injected a stream of true qi into the lotus of creation. Next second, with the injection of infuriating energy, the starlight on the lotus of fortune became extraordinarily bright. The more true qi is injected, the more radiance the lotus of fortune will emit. But no matter how much Chen Daoxian injected, this lotus of good fortune is like a bottomless container, accepting all Chen Daoxian's true energy. Chen Daoxian knew this spiritual plant must have a capacity limit. It's just that the total amount of true qi in his current qi si is far from the capacity of the lotus of fortune. This time, Chen Daoxian thought of another question. Wait until he builds the foundation. After the infuriating spirit tempered by the sword will transform into the real essence, the quality must be very high, even compared to the sword essence of the foundation building period. So how did Chen Daoxian determine that the Dantian pressure reducer he built could hold so much true qi or true yuan? This is no joke. If you can't test the capacity limit of this Dantian pressure reducer, when he builds the foundation he will face great risks. Think about it. He had to find a foundation establishment cultivator as a tool for him to test the specific tolerance limit of this magic weapon. Do not know why. What flashed in his mind was not a foundation-building cultivator from the human race, but Luoli. Luoli is not only a foundation-building cultivator, but also a late foundation-building cultivator. It can be said that her talent is very good. In Luo Ziyuan's words, his daughter was born in the mermaid clan and was delayed. Otherwise, it might be a cultivator of the Zifu period now. But I just offended someone. And now I have to ask someone for help. Chen Daoxian always felt a little hard to tell. Forget it. Build this magic tool first, and then test its performance. Chen Daoxian shook his head and said, consciousness sinks into the sea of consciousness. 10 stardust revolves around the golden scriptures. Chen Daoxian took a deep breath and fused the 10 stars together. Next moment, the familiar epiphany came again. After a stick of incense. When Chen Daoxian opened his eyes again, he already had a certain grasp of building a Dantian pressure reducer. I saw him take out a lotus of good fortune, use infuriating energy to engrave array patterns on its surface. As the pattern is inscribed, the aura on the lotus of creation continues to flow with the pattern. 1-layer pattern, 2-layer pattern, 3-layer. The array pattern is superimposed to the 3rd layer. The aura on the lotus of creation instantly collapsed. Failed. Chen Daoxian looked at the lotus of fortune that he had refined and discarded, and said with a headache, this control formation is simply too difficult to adjust, and it is necessary to control the absorption of true qi by the lotus of fortune, and ask it to feed back to the master. It is also necessary to control it so that it does not completely absorb the infuriating energy as its own nutrients. Finally, it has to be superimposed on other array patterns. Rubbing his swollen head, Chen Daoxian tried again. With failure after failure, the lotus of creation in front of him is getting less and less. 10 days, 20 days, a month. Time passed day by day. Chen Daoxian, who was immersed in research, could not find the passage of time at all. Even Chen Xianhe didn't even bother to go up to greet him when he returned to his family to get the flying sword in the middle. Half-year later. Refiner room. Chen Daoxian stared at the lotus of good fortune in front of him. This is the 3rd time he has taken the spiritual plant material, the lotus of fortune, from Luoli. The whole lotus of good fortune in the 3 storage bags was turned into waste in his experiments. But for so long, after countless experiments, adjustments, and epiphanies, Chen Daoxian finally finalized the pattern of this magic weapon. This scene. If other second-order refiners see it, they will be shocked. Because everyone is refining the instrument step by step according to the refining methods in the inheritance of the refining instruments, and Chen Daoxian directly jumped to the step of creating new instruments. Generally speaking, The craftsmen who can create new magic tools are all masters with extremely high level of crafting. And even such a master-level artifact refiner would not be able to create a magical artifact in half a year. Every instrument is created. It must be accompanied by the painstaking efforts of a refiner for decades, or even a lifetime. There is no such thing as Chun Daoxian. It took half a year to come up with a magic weapon. Moreover, it is also a heaven-defying magic weapon such as the Dantian pressure reducer. Chun Daoxian couldn't be more clear about what this magical tool meant. Not only is he able to attack the legendary sword Cultivator, but it also means that there will be no problem with the foundation of the Chun family's children in the future. As long as the children of the Chun family reach the perfect cultivation level of qi refining before the age of 60, they can all succeed in foundation building. And reaching the perfect cultivation base of qi refining before the age of 60, even the cultivator of the lower spiritual roots who enjoys the basic resource supply of the Chun family, there is no problem. Chapter 120. Refiner Room. Chun Daoxian looked at the Dantian pressure reducer he had worked so hard to build, and he felt a sense of accomplishment in his heart. This Dantian pressure reducer made with the Lotus of Good Fortune as the main material is not a natal magic weapon, but an ordinary magic weapon. Or, this is an experiment that Chun Daoxian used for his experiments. Since the natal magic weapon can only be used by the owner himself, naturally it cannot be used for experiments. As long as the experiment of this Dantian decompressor is successful, Chun Daoxian will be able to create a natal Dantian decompressor in the same way as a natal instrument. Until then, Chun Daoxian can confidently and boldly comprehend the sword intent, temper his true qi, and attack the legendary sword Cultivator. Think of this. Chun Daoxian's fatigue from half a year of boring research on magical instruments was swept away, and his whole person was full of fighting spirit. Sequoia Island, Wanghai Pavilion. Chun Daoxian smiled and took out the Dantian pressure reducer he built, and handed it to Luo Li. Chun Daoxian. This is what you said last time. Looking for something for me to experiment with? Half a year has passed. The little grudge between him and Luo Li had long since disappeared under Chun Daoxian's mouth. Now he and Luo Li have resumed their former relationship. Do not. To be precise, it is still a little different from before. For example, Luo Li never mentioned calling his master again. Called him by his first name every time. Right? Chun Daoxian smiled and nodded. You just need to inject real essence into it. Luo Li took this magical instrument that looked like the lotus of creation from him, tilted his head and said, "What speed should I use to inject real energy into it?" Chun Daoxian thought for a while and said, "Forget it, you can come home with me." What? Luo Li was caught off guard by Chun Daoxian's words. But Chun Daoxian didn't care so much. He took her hand and headed toward Shuanghu Island in the direction of the wind. In order to worry that the mortals of the family would see it, Chun Daoxian also took an invisibility amulet on Luo Li's body. It won't take long. Luo Li landed in the courtyard of Chun Daoxian Lingfu. Seeing the Lingtan in the courtyard, Luo Li's eyes lit up, and with a thud, he got into the Lingtan. "Stop playing, you help me test this magic weapon." Chun Daoxian was quite speechless as he watched Luo Li swimming happily in Lingtan. "Whoa!" Luo Li got out of the Lingtan and said, "Okay, give me the magic weapon." Chun Daoxian threw the magic tool to her and instructed, "You follow my instructions to inject real energy. For the first time, use your half speed to inject real energy into this magic tool. I will not call to stop. Don't stop. Know it." Luo Li nodded, then looked at the lotus-shaped magic weapon in his hand with a pretty face and seriousness. Took a deep breath and poured the real essence in the body into the magic weapon in front of him. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. About an hour later, Luo Li's pretty face was covered with fine beads of sweat, and the lotus-shaped instrument in front of her was also glowing red, as if it would melt at any time. "Okay, stop!" Chun Daoxian shouted. Hearing this shout, Luo Li instantly stopped. "How about it? How much real essence do you have left in your body now?" Luo Li carefully sensed the sea of qi in his Dantian, and replied, "There are still less than 30% of the true essence." "Less than 30%, Chun Daoxian murmured. "Considering that you are in Lingtan, you are always recovering your true essence. That is to say, the true essence you inject into this magic weapon is 90% of your Danshan's qi. Speaking of this, Chen Daoxuan's tone revealed a hint of excitement. I thought about it carefully. He continued. Otherwise, will you stay with me for a few days? What? Luoli blushed when she heard this request, feeling a little overwhelmed. That's right, the next experiment may be a little dangerous, so I decided to create a copy of the life spirit armor for you first to ensure your safety, said. Chen Daoxian looked at Luoli with a hot look in his eyes. Seems to be eyeing an excellent research subject. What do you want to do? Seeing Chen Daoxuan's scorching eyes, Luoli was obviously a lot higher than him, but for some reason he felt a little scared. Don't be afraid, I'm just a cultivator of the 9th level of Qi refining. Are you still worried that I will be bad for you, a cultivator in the late stage of foundation building? Who is afraid? Luoli bravely said. Just don't be afraid. Chen Daoxuan's mouth curled into a smile. 3 days later, Luoli put on the life armor that Chen Daoxian tailored for her, looked at Chen Daoxian and said, Tell me, what are you going to do today? Let's continue the experiment from the last time today, and still inject true qi into this magic weapon at the same speed as last time. Okay. Luoli, who was wearing the spiritual armor of life, took a deep breath and injected his true qi into the lotus-shaped magic weapon. An hour and a half later, the lotus-shaped instrument in front of me was already bright almost during the day, but it just didn't explode. Chen Daoxian felt suddenly, this thing really deserves to be a second-order low-grade magic weapon, and it can't even fill all the real essence of a late foundation building cultivator. If it is promoted to the second-order high-grade or even the third-order magic weapon, then it is not against the sky. Think of this. Chen Daoxian continued to instruct. You restore your true essence first, we will continue later. Luoli, who was wearing spirit armor, didn't say a word, and went straight into the spirit pool to recover his true essence. After about 4 or 5 hours, Luoli, who had recovered his true essence, continued to repeat the experiment just now. Repeat this 3 times. In this lotus-shaped instrument, a cultivator in the late stage of foundation establishment has stored 3 times the true essence. Okay. Stop. Chen Daoxian felt that this experiment was no longer necessary. The late foundation building cultivator has 3 times the true essence, although Luoli's cultivation is different from that of the human cultivator. But no matter how big the difference is, it is at least 3 times the real essence of the monks in the middle stage of the foundation building of the human race. Luoli didn't seem to hear Chen Daoxuan's order this time, and the speed of recovering his true essence was a little slower. Next moment, a colorless fire ignited on the lotus-shaped instrument, and then a beam of light shot up into the sky and plunged straight into the sky. The shock wave brought by the beam of light directly sent the nearest Luoli flying out. Chen Daoxian immediately summoned the spirit armor. In addition, he was standing far away, so he didn't receive much impact. The beam of light soaring into the sky took 3 full breaths before it stopped. Cough, cough, cough. Chen Daoxian got up from the ground awkwardly. Compared to him, Luoli was even more embarrassed at the moment. It's just fortunate that he has the protection of his life spirit armor, and the beam of light just now went towards the sky, so Luoli didn't suffer any damage. See this? Chen Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief. However, this courtyard is almost completely destroyed. Fortunately, all the young maids of the Chen family in Lingfu were sent home today. Otherwise, it is estimated that there will be no small casualties. Are you okay? I'm fine. Luoli flew up quickly, but the panic in his eyes could not be concealed. You'll be fine, don't be afraid, we'll move on to the next experiment. After ignoring Luoli's terrified eyes, Chen Daoxian took out a lotus-shaped magic weapon from the storage bag again. Chapter 121. Twin Lakes Island Port. Chen Daoxian was a little embarrassed when he watched Luoli flee back into the sea without turning his head. Seeing her like this, next time I want to find her for a similar experiment, I guess there is no door left. But the Dantian pressure reducer has finally been refined successfully. Chen Daoxian looked at the lotus-shaped instrument in his hand, and the whole person was immediately excited. According to this experiment, the result of Chen Daoxuan's test is that this second-order low-grade magic weapon can store up to 3 times the real essence of the late foundation-building cultivator. Moreover, Luoli injected real energy into it at the fastest speed of her own, and it did not affect it in the slightest. So to say, As long as this lotus-shaped magic weapon is refined into a natal magic weapon, it will definitely be able to solve the pressure problem of the expansion of the Dantian Qi when the foundation is established. Think of this. Chen Daoxian couldn't wait to fly back towards his spiritual palace. In no time, Chen Daoxian, who was flying in the sky, looked at the devastated Lingfu courtyard. Shaking his head, he flew in the direction of the refining room. Enter the refining room. Chen Daoxian took out a second-order high-grade lotus of good fortune. After taking a deep breath, he began to concentrate on refining his second natal magic weapon. Time passed little by little in the process of refining the magic weapon. Blink of an eye. 3 days have passed. I saw on a white lotus flower countless mysterious and unusual formation patterns mixed with Chen Daoxuan's blood essence, slowly blending into the interior of the lotus flower. Soon, both are integrated into the white lotus. Only this white lotus flower with a gleaming aura on its surface was left, spinning slowly in midair. It's done! Looking at the white lotus flower floating in front of him, Chen Daoxian was very excited. Seriously speaking, this is the second magic weapon he has created. To some extent, the meaning of this magic weapon is definitely not under the melting furnace. If the Rongling furnace gave the cultivators of the Chen family a shortcut to obtain a large number of cultivation resources, then this Dantian decompression instrument gave all the cultivators of the Chen family hope to build a foundation. To know, the cultivator's breakthrough in the great realm does not look at the spiritual roots. This is also the only fair place for the cultivator on the way to practice. In other words, there is no essential difference between the lower spiritual root cultivator and the upper spiritual root cultivator when breaking through the foundation building. Spiritual roots are only related to the speed of normal cultivation. In this way, a treasure that can increase the probability of monks building a foundation becomes very important. In general, the elite children of big families are in order to ensure that they are safe when building foundations. In addition to preparing foundation building pills for them, other treasures to assist foundation building will also be prepared to ensure that the elite children of the family are 100% successful in foundation building. However, this treatment is simply not universal. The price of a foundation establishment pill is already as high as 40,000 to 50,000 spirit stones. If it is to make up for the last 10% or 20% of the probability of foundation building, the cost will even be a tenfold premium on this basis, reaching as many as hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. At such a terrible price, only the most elite family members like Zhou Mubai would use it. For other ordinary people, it is not bad to get a foundation establishment pill. However, the big family is no better than the small family, because their foundation establishment dan can not only be purchased at the internal price, but also can be purchased from the family borrowed spirit stones. The consciousness moved slightly. The white lotus-shaped instrument turned into a ray of light, rushing straight to Chen Daoxuan's Dantian Qi. Next moment, Chen Daoxian sank his consciousness into his Dantian. Discover Dantian Qi at home. A small pair of spirit armor and a white lotus flower are hovering in the center of the Sea of Qi. The position of the white lotus is at the very center above the Sea of Qi, and the spirit armor revolves around the white lotus. It seems that the two get along very well. Eretsi. A trace of true Qi floated around the white lotus like a white mist. But the white lotus did not have Chen Daoxuan's order, and did not take the initiative to absorb infuriating energy at all. See this scene. Chen Daoxian was very satisfied. This lotus of good fortune was finally refined into a qualified natal instrument by him. Absorbing and feeding back infuriating energy all require the master to take the initiative to order, and it will not take the initiative to absorb infuriating energy and true essence as before. Think of this. Chen Daoxian immediately injected his true energy into the white lotus artifact. Due to the use of the second-order high-grade lotus of good fortune, the white lotus-shaped instrument refined by Chen Daoxian actually reached the second-rank middle grade. It is a small grade higher than the magic weapon he experimented with. Chen Daoxian knew that this was because his skill in refining magic tools was not good enough, and the formation patterns he created for this natal magic tool were not advanced enough. As a result, the rank of the instrument did not reach the second-rank high grade. But in any case, a second-order middle-grade natal magic weapon is also the most valuable magic weapon in Chen Daoxuan's hands. Under Chen Daoxuan's order, The White Lotus madly absorbed the true qi in Chun Daoxuan's Dantian Qi Si. It only took less than a cup of tea before and after, and the true energy in Chan Daoxuan's Dantian was almost completely absorbed by the White Lotus. Watching the thief go to hollow out the empty Dantian Qi Si, Chun Daoxuan's slightly pale face suddenly showed excitement. The next step is to try to let it feed back the true qi to the Dantian Qi Si. Thinking of this, Chan Daoxian gave an order to the White Lotus again. Next second, a large amount of true qi rushed towards the Dantian Qi Si, and in a moment the Dantian Qi Si became full again. Seeing this scene, Chan Daoxian was a little speechless with excitement. In addition to acting as a Dantian decompressor when breaking through the foundation, this natal instrument also has an important function. That is to store infuriating energy and improve the durability of the monk's battle. Just think, if all the cultivators of the Chun family possess such a magic weapon. During the battle, others thought that the cultivator of the Chun family had exhausted his true energy, but as a result, the cultivator of the Chun family gave the opponent a ruthless attack. What kind of picture would it be? Looking at the White Lotus flower spinning in his Dantian, Chun Daoxian became more and more satisfied. For this magic weapon, he spent a total of more than a year before and after, and most of the epiphany opportunities were smashed into this magic weapon. Even his own kendo practice, as well as Professors Chun Daochu, Chan Daoyan and others have been delayed. But everyone knows that Chan Daoxian is busy with a very important thing. They followed the foundation of Professor Chun Daoxian and taught themselves the knowledge of alchemy and alchemy, especially Chan Daochu. After more than 2 years of training and refining, his refining level is much higher than that of young cultivators of Taoism. Then, he actually served as the refining teacher of these young Taoist monks and experienced the feeling of being a teacher in advance. Refiner room. Chun Daoxian stood up. He stretched his muscles and bones, and a bright smile appeared on his face. What should I name you? Chan Dao looked at the white magic weapon in his Dantian and pondered for a moment. 3 layers of lotus are 1 rank, but you have 6 layers. That is 2 ranks, so let's call you the 2nd rank to create a white lotus. Chapter 122. With excitement, Chun Daoxian walked out of the Lingfu. En route, he saw a group of craftsmen repairing the courtyard destroyed by his experiments. After thinking about it, he walked towards the group of craftsmen. The family has been in charge over the years. Whether it is a mortal or a monk in the family, they are all deeply impressed by him, the young patriarch of the Chan family. See Chun Daoxian. Everyone knelt down and saluted him. Meet the young patriarch. Get up. When the words fell, everyone was lifted up by a gentle breeze and stood up involuntarily. Facing the patriarch, the immortal master, everyone was both respectful and awe-inspiring. After the salute, they all stood there dumbfounded at a loss. Let me ask you, where is your general Chao Chun Beiwang? At this time, a man in his 30s stood up and said boldly, Master Chan has been busy building the clan. He should be on the construction site of the clan. Okay, keep busy. Yes, young patriarch. Seeing everyone bowing and answering the order, Chan Daoxian flew in the direction of the clan. Chang Clan School, also known as Chongping No. 1 Xiuxian Primary School. It has taken more than 2 years to build so far. Why is it taking so long? This is because the craftsmen of the Chun family presided over the construction of this school from beginning to end, and no monks were involved. The monks of the Chun family are basically a radish and a pit. There is simply no manpower to help Chun Beiwang build the school. In addition to building the school, Chun Beiwang will also build 108 independent courtyards as accommodation for the first batch of monks of the Fuzi generation. The locations of these 108 courtyards are basically built near the spiritual eye. This is also to facilitate the cultivation of the monks of the Fuzi generation. So much work. For the few artisans in the Chun family, it was already a huge workload. If it weren't for the fact that everyone had practiced martial arts to some extent and possessed internal strength, they would not be able to withstand such intense work at all. Fortunately, after more than 2 years, the main campus of the school was finally completed. When Chun Daoxian lowered his body, after seeing the large characters of Chongping No. 1 Xiuxian Elementary School written on the stone carving in front of me, I couldn't help feeling overwhelmed. Here will be the first cradle of the rise of the Chan family. Further back, there will be more and more such cradles. Consciousness swept away. Chen Daoxian found Chen Beiwang and Chen Daochu, who were surrounded by the crowd. Soon, Chen Daochu seemed to feel something and looked at the flying figure of Chen Daoxian. Young patriarch, are you out? When Chen Daochu saw Chen Daoxian, his face was full of surprise. More than a year has passed. Chen Daochu also grew taller, and his cultivation reached the 7th level of qi refining, becoming a late qi refining cultivator. Seeing his rapid improvement in cultivation, Chen Daoxian nodded and said, "Yes, it seems that you haven't been lazy during this time." Hey. After finally being praised by Chen Daoxian once, Chen Daochu scratched his head embarrassedly. After finishing speaking, Chen Daoxian smiled and looked at Chen Beiwang with white hair, and said respectfully, "Chen Jiangzhua, you have worked hard?" It's not hard, it's just a pity. The old man only feels that his time is running out. I'm afraid that after the completion of this school, the old man will no longer be able to contribute to the young patriarch and the family. Speaking of this, Chen Beiwang's expression darkened. Don't say that. Chen Daoxian comforted. What you did is not a meager effort. Your contribution to my Chen family is no less than anyone else's. If it weren't for you day and night, you would build houses for the clan, build bridges and roads, build schools, and carry out all kinds of construction projects. My Chen family does not have the current situation either. Although you are not a monk, you have laid a solid foundation for the development of my Chen family. Speaking of this, he bowed his hands to Chen Beiwang. I will replace the family, thank you, heard. Chen Beiwang only felt his eyes swell. He couldn't help covering his face with his sleeves, and he wept. Look at the gray-haired old man. Chen Daoxian announced in public. In the future, all members of my Chen clan, as long as they make enough contributions to the family, can join my Chen clan ancestral hall and enjoy the family worship forever. What? Hear this. Chen Beiwang couldn't believe his ears. All along, mortals and cultivators cannot be placed side by side. This is the consensus of Wan Xinghai and even the entire world of cultivating immortals. In the eyes of cultivators, mortals are just reproduction tools, the most useless bottom layer. Whether it is production or force, mortals do not have any advantages, and can even be said to be a drag. Although there are tens of millions of mortals in the Zhou family, most of them rely on the monks of the Zhou family to guard and even support them. How can such a mortal be respected by a monk? But at the moment, in Chen Daoxuan's place, Chen Beiwang felt the respect of the immortal master, who was above him. This kind of respect was something he had never experienced before. It gave him a shudder from the depths of his soul. I'm old. I'm thankful for the grace of the young patriarch. Saying that, Chen Beiwang with white hair was about to kneel, but Chen Daoxian stopped him. Chen Jiangzhua, this is not necessary. Chen Daoxian said warmly. Only Chen Beiwang was left in tears. A long time. Chen Beiwang, who was relieved, introduced to Chen Daoxian. Young patriarch, look, this area under our feet is all built according to your requirements. Before Chen Daoxian came, he had already flew around the campus. About the appearance of this school, it has been done roughly. Listening to Chen Beiwang's introduction at the moment, the impression of this school in my heart is even more profound. In general, this is an elementary school that is very similar to Chen Daoxuan's previous life. Even the class division is very similar to the previous life. No way. The Chen family has limited teachers, and it is impossible to do one-on-one teaching. Only large class teaching methods can be implemented. Fortunately, everyone is a monk, and there is no problem that no one can see or hear, or the teacher can't take care of it. And there is another benefit of studying in large classes. It can inspire students to compete with each other. Let everyone be more attentive whether they are cultivating or learning all kinds of alchemy and tool refining knowledge. Coupled with the resource supply system provided by the Chen family, it is believed that few monks of the blessing generation will fish for 3 days and spend 2 days drying the net. Of course, if such a lazy cultivator really wants to appear, Chen Daoxian will not be polite to him. Just give up on him. In the future, there will be more and more monks of the blessed generation, and there are more than 100 people in the first batch alone. Chen Daoxian could not expect every cultivator of the blessing generation to become a talent. This is unrealistic whether in the past or in this life. Accompanied by Chen Beiwang, Chen Daoxian visited the whole school. The Chongping No. 1 Xiuxian Primary School cost Chen Beiwang a lot of hard work. And it is also the proud work of the old man. The only pity is that Chen Beiwang is a mortal and does not understand formation. In this regard, we have to invite Chen Daoxian, the formation, to take action. Chen Jiangzhua, then leave the formation to me. You just need to build the courtyard of the student dormitory. Follow your orders, young patriarch. Chen Beiwang bowed his hands. Chapter 123. The next days, Chen Daoxuan's practice became very regular on weekdays. In addition to teaching Chen Daochu, Chen Daolian and others the knowledge of weapon refining and alchemy. All that is left is to comprehend spells so as to improve his kendo realm. As time goes by day, Chen Daoxuan's progress in the Sword of Wind is getting bigger and bigger, until he has reached the point where there is no progress. On a sea surface not far from Shuanghu Island, Chen Daoxian sat cross-legged in the air. In front of him, surrounded by two flying swords, it was Chen Daoxuan's two flying swords, Feishue and Chengying. Suddenly, within a radius of 100 zhang with Chen Daoxian as the center, a slight drizzle started to fall. The rain curtain connects with the sea water, making a rustling sound. This is the phenomenon of chasing the wind and covering the rain. In the rain curtain, one after another white marks shuttled indefinitely. This is the ultimate move in the sword of chasing the wind and covering the rain, transformed by the sword of Chengying. Compared with more than a year ago, when I didn't get Zhoumubai's swordsmanship jade slip. At this moment, Chen Daoxian used the white mark made by this shadow-bearing sword again. I feel that both power and speed have reached a new level. When the female cultivator of Izuma was beheaded, if she was in the realm of swordsmanship now, she would never have been entangled in the fight for so long. Up to 3 swords. It can split the opponent's true element shield. Feeling the white mark of the power reaching the limit, Chen Daoxian silently retracted the Feishue Chengying double swords. After integrating into the wind pattern, the power of the wind-chasing sword art has been raised to the limit, and now, only the water pattern is left. Chen Daoxuan's eyes burst into a ball of light. Time passes day by day. In the blink of an eye, 3 months have passed. 3 months, a total of 9 epiphany opportunities. Let Chen Daoxian cultivate a total of 2 first-order watercraft spells to a perfect state, and the waterway pattern has also reached a certain level. You can already try to integrate into kendo. Think of this. Chen Daoxian controlled the 10 stardust in the sea of consciousness and collided with each other. Next second, his consciousness flew higher and higher, and all kinds of insights about the water kendo became deeper and deeper. After a stick of incense, Chen Daoxian opened his eyes. So it is no wonder Zhou Mubai said that by practicing the sword art of Qianyuan Jianzong, in fact, everyone can finally comprehend the sword intent. But the difficulty of comprehending the sword intent is different. If I specialize in the wind-chasing sword art or the rain-covering sword art, I am afraid it will be even more difficult to comprehend the sword intent. Fortunately, the upper limit of the wind-chasing sword art is much higher than the single wind-chasing sword art, and the rain-covering sword art, saving me the difficulty of comprehending the sword intent. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian grinned happily. It has been more than 4 years since he obtained the ability to store his understanding in the Hongming Enlightenment Classic. Chen Daoxian is now in his 20s. 4 years. He devoted most of his epiphany opportunities to comprehending kendo. In this way, only then can we comprehend the mystery of sword intent. This shows how difficult it is to comprehend sword intent and become a sword cultivator. This is also the reason why Guang'an sword immortal Zhou Mubai has such a great reputation and can be listed on the Zifu Tianjiao list. I saw that Chen Daoxian jumped up, fly towards the port of Shuanghu Island. About 100 miles from the sea surface of Shuanghu Island, Chen Daoxian sat cross-legged on the sea again. Feishue Chengying and 2 flying swords filed out from the storage bag. Looking at the 2 flying swords, Chen Daoxian showed a confident look at the corner of his mouth. He knew that at this moment, he was only a thin line away from comprehending the sword intent. At that time, the so-called half-foot stepped into the threshold of sword intent. In his eyes at this time, it was so ridiculous. At the beginning, it was just a practice of normal swordsmanship to the point where there was no progress. He never thought of using magic to comprehend the Tao. and he didn't even know how to integrate the Tao with the sword. And this time, a curtain of rain appeared again. Compared with the previous sword energy rain curtain, the rain curtain surrounding Chen Daoxian at this moment seems to be even more agile. Not only that, the next moment, a white mark appeared in the rain curtain. The white marks kept moving through the rain curtain, and at the end, the sword energy rain curtain suddenly disappeared. Between heaven and earth, all that remained was a new rain curtain of white streaks. The sword is like a breeze, the breeze is like silk rain, the silk rain sword intent, so it is. A smile appeared on the corner of Chen Daoxian's mouth. Surrounding Chen Daoxian, there were more and more terrifying white marks, as if everything that entered this world would be torn to shreds. Next moment, the white marks suddenly disappeared, turning into a rain curtain of sword energy. The two changed freely, making people overwhelmed. In the past, the white mark that Chongying's sword turned into was the biggest killer move of Chen Daoxian's sword of chasing the wind and covering the rain. And after comprehending the Siyu sword intent, this biggest ultimate move turned into an ordinary white rain curtain. The power change generated by this is more than tenfold. Even more terrifying. Sword intent has the function of quenching the cultivator's true energy, true essence, and mana. Once Chen Daoxian's true qi has been tempered by Siyu sword intent, the quality of true qi will definitely be improved to a higher level. He didn't know if it could be comparable to the real essence of a base-building cultivator, but it was definitely several times more than that of a normal qi-refining cultivator. Otherwise, Zhou Mubai wouldn't hold such a high regard for this kind of sword cultivator. Comprehend the sword intent and create a second-grade fortune-telling white lotus. Before the foundation was established, Chen Daoxian had already completed two things. The rest is to rely on the accumulated infuriating qi to polish it to a state of harmony. This is watermill work. It doesn't even require monks to retreat to monks all day long, and they can polish their infuriating qi bit by bit in their daily life. In fact, after more than a year of polishing infuriating, Chen Daoxian found that his speed of polishing his infuriating energy was relatively fast. A year or so at most. Should be high. You can achieve the state mentioned in Guangong, where there is no progress and the state is harmonious. But, before that, he had to temper Danshan's true qi with silk rain sword intent. He worked so hard and wanted to comprehend the sword intent during the qi refining period. Isn't it just for this opportunity to temper true qi? In this regard, Chen Daoxian will never miss it. Return to Lingfu Courtyard. The courtyard that was almost destroyed in the last experiment was restored to its original appearance, and even Chen Daoxian made a little change according to his liking. For example, the area of Lingtan has been expanded by 3 points. Of course, if the area of Lingtan expands, there must be enough spiritual energy. Fortunately, there are not many monks in the Chen family now, and there is not much spiritual energy that consumes the spiritual veins every day. Lingtan can accumulate enough spiritual fluid. When the monks of the Fuzi generation begin to practice, it is not certain. It seems that we have to continue to advance to spiritual veins. Chen Daoxian muttered silently. In fact, neither he nor Chen Xianhe had thought that the development of the Chen family would be so rapid. In less than a few years, the first-order spiritual veins are somewhat insufficient. The reason for this is that Chen Daoxian's family birth policy is too perverted. In addition to working all day, the male clansmen are covering their heads and making people, so that the family population has skyrocketed in recent years. It far exceeded the requirement that Chen Daoxian set for Chongping County Magistrate Chen Ji, to double the population tenfold. Inside the courtyard, Chen Daoxian put aside his distracting thoughts. Wholeheartedly, he used the Siyu sword intent he realized to temper his Dantian true qi. Sword intent is illusory, colorless, and formless. But it is real. This was recorded by Zhou Mubai in the Sword Dao Jade Slip. Now, Chen Daoxian finally understood the meaning of this sentence. He only felt that his true qi was changing little by little under an inexplicable force. The rate of this transformation is slow but steady. Closed for 3 days in a row, Chen Daoxian finally refined all the true qi in his Dantian into a brand new sword qi. That's what he called this new infuriating. After a simple attempt, he found that this new type of infuriating energy was at least 3 times higher in quality than ordinary infuriating energy. although it has not reached the point where the foundation-building cultivator's true essence is more than 10 times stronger than that of the qi-refining cultivator. But compared with ordinary qi cultivators, there is already a qualitative gap. And compared to the foundation establishment cultivator, his true qi is no longer so vulnerable. At least now let him fight against the female cultivator of the Izumo country. With the environment at that time, Chen Daoxian could kill him with a single sword. Chapter 124. Time flies. A year passed quickly. Because of the understanding of the Siyu sword intent, he crossed the iconic threshold of the swordsmanship. The obstacles in Chen Daoxian's swordsmanship also disappeared. This year, Chen Daoxian was polishing his infuriating energy, and while teaching a few Taoist monks, he spent the rest of his time comprehending kendo. Moreover, as Chen Daoxian's kendo realm became more and more advanced, he found that he was in a state of non-awareness, and his kendo realm actually improved a little bit with his enlightenment. It seems that as he comprehends the sword intent, his kendo talent has also been strengthened to some extent. This discovery undoubtedly made Chen Daoxian extremely happy. Although Chen Daoxian's kendo has progressed like a fly, he knows that he did not rely on his kendo talent to get to where he is today. Although Chen Daoxian's kendo talent is not bad, he can barely be called a genius in Qinyuan Jianzong. But compared to Zhou Mubai, who could understand the sword intent at the foundation stage, his kendo talent was still weaker. Only, Chen Daoxian couldn't fight against his kendo talent, but he couldn't stand his plugins. With the blessing of Hongming Enlightenment Classic to store comprehension ability, all difficulties were easily resolved. Comprehending the way of kendo is naturally as easy as drinking water. The Siyu sword intent, including the sword art of chasing the wind and covering the rain previously performed by Chen Daoxian, focuses on the word scattered. Sword qi turns into rain, white marks make the curtain. It reflects the word scattered in kendo. This kind of sword intent is most suitable for one enemy, and is good at group attack. But at the same time, compared with other sword intents, Siyu sword intent inevitably has shortcomings. That is the lack of explosive power. Of course, it's not that Chen Daoxian lacks explosive power, but that he is less explosive compared to sword cultivators of the same level. Therefore, the direction of Siyu Jianyi's next practice, Chen Daoxian called it combination. The so-called combination is to fuse the white-marked rain curtains into one. Wanting to do this is very difficult. At least Chen Daoxian has to comprehend Siyu Jianyi deeper to be able to do it. Chen Daoxian practiced for a year. Countless times of epiphany, it can only shrink the white rain curtain with a radius of 100 feet to a dozen feet. Then he seemed to have encountered a new bottleneck. No matter how he realized, the level of kendo would no longer advance. But Chen Daoxian knew that what he encountered this time was not the bottleneck of kendo, but the bottleneck of cultivation. To put it simply, his cultivation is too low, and it is no longer enough to support him to comprehend the more advanced realm of kendo. This kind of phenomenon of delaying the realm of cultivation is estimated to be unique in the entire cultivation world. In fact, not to mention that the cultivation realm delays the realm of kendo, it is a sword cultivator who can understand the sword intent in the qi refining stage like him, and it is estimated that the entire Wuxia does not exist. Otherwise, Chen Daoxian should have at least heard of it. And whether he is from the 3 lists given by Qianyuan sword sect, or from outside rumors, he has never heard of such a sword cultivator. The reason is simple. Even if a cultivator with such abnormal kendo talent can comprehend the sword intent during the qi refining period, it is estimated that he would not dare to do so, because doing so is almost no different from courting death. This kind of cultivator, although invincible during the sword qi period, can even kill a foundation-building cultivator across borders. And once the foundation is established, what awaits him will be death. This point is clear to Chen Daoxian, who has seen Zhou Mubai's sword and jade slips. Don't say anything else. He himself is in this state now, and whenever he thinks about building a foundation, there will always be a strong panic in his heart. A monk's sense of panic and whim does not appear for no reason. Whenever a monk has this feeling, he must pay attention to whether there is any danger waiting for him. Of course, Chen Daoxian had already made sufficient preparations for the foundation building. If he could not succeed in foundation building even with such adequate preparations, it meant that comprehending the sword intent during the qi refining period was a dead end. However, in order to make sure nothing goes wrong, Chen Daoxian still plans to go to Guang'an Mansion to buy another Foundation establishment pill. Twin Lakes Island. In Chen Daoxian's Lingfu courtyard. You mean you want to buy a Foundation pill? Chen Xianhe took 3 steps and took 2 steps, stepped forward, firmly grabbed Chen Daoxian's shoulder, and said excitedly, in just over 2 years, you have actually polished your infuriating energy to a harmonious state. Really fast, too fast. Tears flickered in Chen Xian's eyes, and then smiled. If you had taken Tong Mai pill at the beginning, and you had the current cultivation environment, maybe your foundation building age would really break the record set by Zhou Mu. Looking at Chen Daoxian, who was already 21 years old, Chen Xianhe couldn't help feeling emotional. Whether it's 20 or 21, to me it makes no difference. Chen Daoxian smiled and said, it's boring to argue about this. Yes, it's boring to argue about this, haha. Chen Xianhe laughed loudly. This was probably the happiest time he laughed after the family cultivated spiritual veins. The Chen family will finally have the first foundation establishment cultivator. With first, second, third, it's not far off. Chen Xianhe thought of Chen Daochu and Chen Dalian, who like Chen Daoxian were both cultivators of the upper spiritual roots, and they had already reached the 8th level of qi refining, which was only 1 step away from the 9th level of qi refining. Compared with Chen Daoxian back then, Chen Daochu and Chen Dalian seemed to enjoy the best conditions for cultivation at the beginning of their cultivation. All kinds of resources are endless. It is estimated that it is Zhou Mubai, during the qi refining period, it is impossible to be as extravagant as the two of them. Although the Zhou family has a great business, there are many cultivators in the clan with hundreds of thousands of them. Therefore, it is impossible for the Zhou family to give Zhou Mubai so many resources during the qi refining period. Even if Zhou Mubai is a cultivator of Tianlingen, Zhou Mubai's real rise did not depend on his heavenly spiritual root, but instead he realized the sword intent during the foundation establishment period, and became a sword cultivator. This made the Zhou family put all their bets on him, and various resources continued to be tilted, so that Zhou Mubai was only 100 years old, and he became a cultivator of the Purple Mansion. You must know that the promotion of cultivation in the foundation establishment stage is much more difficult than that in the qi refinement stage. There is no such thing as advancing to several levels of cultivation in a year. In fact, during the foundation establishment period, a monk can advance to the first level of cultivation in an average of 10 years, even if the speed is acceptable. The path of cultivation is inherently more difficult the more you go to the later stage. Otherwise, there will be no monks with hundreds of thousands of years of life, but there is not enough time to cultivate and break through. 3 years later, Chen Daoxian and Chen Xianhe once again embarked on a journey to Guang'an Mansion. It was peaceful all the way. A month later, Chen Daoxian and Chen Xianhe walked into the Hongyin Feijian shop in Sangxiafang City. Daoxian, you said that you didn't go to Zhou's auction house to buy the foundation establishment pill this time? Chen Xianhe seemed quite surprised when he heard Chen Daoxian's words. Yes, I want to find an acquaintance to buy it. Chen Daoxian laughed. Acquaintance? Chen Xian's face was full of doubts. In Guang'an Mansion, the most energetic person the Chen family knew was Zhou Mucheng. Chen Xianhe guessed that Daoxian wanted to find Zhou Mucheng to buy at the Zhou family's internal price. However, doesn't this force Zhou Mucheng to make mistakes? The Zhou family has strict rules and their own people use the foundation pills, which can be purchased at the internal price, but they are never allowed to resell the foundation pills and dig the corners of the family. Otherwise, if caught, the Zhou family law enforcement team will not spare it lightly. Thinking of this, Chen Xianhe hesitated. Daoxian, now my Chen family does not lack these 20,000 spiritual stones. Why make it difficult for Brother Zhou to do it? Seeing that Uncle 13 was confused, Chen Daoxian smiled and said, Don't worry, Uncle 13, the person I'm looking for is not Uncle Zhou. Chapter 125. Limba Island. Inside a fresh and elegant pavilion, a tall, handsome young monk in a white robe sat on a stone bench and looked indifferently at the rain curtain in the Lingqi outside the pavilion. Behind him, a cultivator of the Zhou family in the late stage of foundation building stood with hand in hand. You mean Spirit Sun City is about to be built? Zhou Mubai threw a handful of Spirit Valley, which attracted the spirit fishes in the spirit pond to scramble continuously. Young patriarch, yes. The Zhou family cultivator lowered his head. What is the number of loose cultivators lost in Arfang City? A lot of. The Zhou family's base-building cultivator's voice trembled slightly. The loss of loose cultivators is about 30%, and it is still being lost. 3%. Zhou Mubai raised his head. Didn't the family also establish spiritual veins for the loose cultivators to practice? Hearing this, the base-building cultivator behind him lowered his head, not knowing how to answer. Sure enough, the little guy said it. After saying something silently in his heart, Zhou Mubai continued, "Where is the core business district?" Heavy losses. A large number of stores have been withdrawn from the core business district, and the number of customers has decreased by 20% compared with before. 20%. This is just the beginning, alas. Zhou Mubai did not expect that the establishment of Lingrui City would have such a big impact on Guang'an Prefecture. Was about to say something. A beautiful maid walked in. Fushan bowed and said, "Young patriarch, there is a son outside asking to see you." "Sir." Zhou Mubai looked at the maid strangely. He said, "You'll understand after seeing this." The maid said, took out a white jade slip and handed it over. Zhou Mubai swept away his consciousness, and immediately saw Chen Daoxian, who was waiting outside, and said with a smile, "Please come in." "Yes, young patriarch." Seeing the maid retreat, Zhou Mubai waved his hand and said, "Go down too." "But, young patriarch, should we just do nothing and watch Lingrui City grow?" The Zhou family cultivator in the late stage of foundation building said anxiously. "Who said we didn't do anything? Aren't we building spiritual veins?" Seeing that the other party wanted to speak again, Zhou Mubai waved his hand. "Young patriarch, your subordinates retire." Watching his leaving back, Zhou Mubai felt a bit of a headache. The continuous expansion of Lingrui City has made more and more cultivators of the Zhou family feel dissatisfied, and the elders of the clan assembly have also continued to attack and want to do something to Lingrui City. Even with Zhou Mubai's prestige, he could no longer suppress these hardliners. Chen Daoxian followed Zhou's maid and came to the pavilion where Zhou Mubai was sitting. "Senior Zhou." Chen Daoxian bowed his hands. Everyone knew that Zhou Mubai's eyes flashed when he saw Chen Daoxian. The figure disappeared in the pavilion in an instant, and in the next instant, Zhou Mubai appeared directly in front of Chen Daoxian. He pointed at Chen Daoxian, his voice trembling. "You actually did it? Junior luck." Zhou Mubai took a deep breath and then heaved a sigh of relief. "I really don't know whether I gave you this jade slip to help you or hurt you this moment." Zhou Mubai couldn't help but feel very sorry. This kind of emotion is only when I see a monk who is more amazing and talented than him, about to fall in front of him. Senior Junior, when he saw the path of sword cultivation recorded by Senior's jade slip, he was born to it. If he falls because of this, Junior will die with no regrets. After finishing speaking, Chen Daoxian stared at the other party with burning eyes. Hearing this, Zhou Mubai could hardly contain the admiration for Chen Daoxian in his eyes. He kept nodding his head and said, "Okay. It's a good one to die without regrets. My generation of sword cultivators should be like this." "Senior." "Don't call me senior." Zhou Mubai raised his hand. "Just rely on this sentence to die without regrets. You and I will be friends in the future. Big brother Zhou." "Ha ha ha ha. Happy." Zhou Mubai laughed loudly. "If you succeed, you will definitely be famous in the future. If you die." Zhou Mubai lowered his voice. "In my lifetime, I will keep your Chen family safe. Hear this promise." Chen Daoxian stared blankly at Zhou Mubai and said sincerely, "Thank you, brother Zhou." He paused and said sternly, "But before that, I have one more thing I want to ask brother Zhou." "Come on." Zhou Mubai waved his hand. "It's about the younger brother's uncle." Having said that, Chen Daoxian introduced Chen Ziyan's situation in detail. After listening to Zhou Mubai, he kept shaking his head and sighing, "It's almost 100 years old. It's too late. If it's less than 65 years old, as far as I know, there is still a kind of heaven and earth treasure that can be tried, but at this age." Zhou Mubai said, shaking his head. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian, who was full of expectations, gradually sank in his heart. As a cultivator, you have to get used to the people around you gradually leaving you. You must know that not every relative has such a gift as you. Zhou Mubai said with relief, "Daoxian, life and death are inherently impermanent. If you don't become an immortal, you and I will have such a day after all, sooner or later." But when Chen Daoxian heard this, He was still reluctant to give up, and raised his head. He said, "Big Brother Zhou, if there is an elixir that can help the older cultivator to forcibly open the sea of Dantian Qi, can't it help him build the foundation?" Zhou Mubai shook his head. "How can it be that simple? In your opinion, what is foundation building? Aura quenches the body, the sea of Qi expands, and the true Qi transforms. What you said is just an appearance." Zhou Mubai explained, "A monk builds a foundation. A deeper change is a transformation in the soul. Do you know why we call the Mahayana true immortal also the pure Yang true immortal?" Chun Daoxian shook his head. Chunyang, it is talking about the complete transformation of the soul, and the foundation is the first step of transformation. Your uncle Chen Xianhe is not lack of qi and blood, not to mention the lack of true qi, but the lack of soul. If the soul is insufficient, can't it be remedied with elixir? Of course it's not that simple. Zhou Mubai shook his head and said, "If you compare a person to a candle, before he is 60 years old the candle is burning vigorously, and after 60 years old the candle gradually burns out. You use elixir to prolong life, you just add a fire to the candle, but it has no effect on the candle itself." Hearing this explanation, Chan Daoxuan's eyes completely dimmed. "My condolences." Zhou Mubai patted his shoulder and said. After he finished speaking, he handed a foundation establishment pill and said, "Although it may not be of much use to you, it can increase your confidence in the first line of foundation establishment." "Thank you, Brother Zhou." Chun Daoxian took the foundation establishment Dan and smiled with a pale face. Watching Chun Daoxian leave, Zhou Mubai sighed and said, "He is another person who is very affectionate. It's a pity, it's a shame." Return to the Hongyin Feijian shop. Chun Daoxian adjusted his emotions, as if nothing happened. Came back. Chun Xianhe reprimanded, "I told you, our Chun family does not lack these 20,000 spiritual stones now, so why should we owe human favors for this? You know, human favor debts are the most difficult to repay." Yes, Daoxian knows it's wrong." Chun Daoxian looked at Chun Xianhe, whose face was getting older, and said with a smile. Chapter 126. Sequoia Island. Wanghai Pavilion. "You want to borrow my clan's spiritual veins?" Luoli looked at Chun Daoxian with a strange face, and immediately felt the harmonious aura on his body, and exclaimed, "Ah, are you going to build a foundation?" "Right." Chun Daoxian smiled slightly. "Of course there's no problem with using the spiritual veins, it's just..." "Just what?" Chun Daoxian frowned. Theoretically, as a subrace of the Chun family, the spiritual vein of the merman is the spiritual vein of his Chun family. It's just that Chun Daoxian used the borrowed word in order to show his respect for the merman. "No. Nothing." Luoli saw Chun Daoxuan's slightly dissatisfied face, and finally held back the words that were on his lips. Wuxia Underwater World. Demon Mountain. In the cave of Luo Shuyuan, the head of the merman clan, several older mermen in the late stage of foundation building were talking to Luo Shuyuan, patriarch. The Clear Water Monkey clan, which is adjacent to our Devil Monkey Mountain, has repeatedly violated the border of our Devil Monkey Mountain, and has hurt several members of our clan. Do you think they are? Looking at the old mermaid who was older than him, Luo Shuyuan sighed. The Clear Water Monkey clan is testing us. Try. The old mermaid was stunned for a moment, and then reacted, "You mean they know your injury?" Speaking of which, there was a look of horror in the old mermaid's eyes. Once Luo Ziyuan's injury is exposed, it will definitely be a disaster for the Mare people. The mermaid race can occupy the third-order spiritual vein of Demon Ape Mountain, all because of the shock of Luo Shuyuan, a late-stage cultivator of the Zifu. If the outside world knew that Luo Shuyuan was seriously injured and died, I am afraid that other races living near the Demon Ape Mountain would come to the door in minutes and tear the Mare people to pieces. As if thinking of something, the old mermaid hesitated and said, "Patriarch, you said that the Wu family is behind the Clear Water Monkey clan." Heard. Luo Shuyuan thought for a while, then shook his head. Guang'an Mansion has experienced the chaos of Divine Ju and the Battle of Zenangwan that year, which has led to the withering of high-ranking monks from major families today. The Wu family is the most affected family among them. They don't even have a cultivator in the Purple House now, so they may not be able to control the Clear Water Monkey clan as easily as before. You mean? I'm afraid this is the idea of the Clear Water Monkey clan. They want our Magic Monkey Mountain. Compared with Wan Xinghai under Qin Yuan Jianzong's rule, the rules of survival in the underwater world of Wan Xinghai are 100 times more cruel. Fighting against each other among various races is completely commonplace. Just like the Mare people occupied the mountain of magic monkeys after killing all the water magic monkeys, the clear water monkey clan can also kill off the mermaid clan and occupy the opponent's spiritual veins again. It's here. There is no order at all. Although Zhenhai Palace is well known in the Wuxia underwater world, they don't care about the fighting among the various ethnic groups in Wuxia. Even behind the slaughter of the major races in the underwater world of Wan Xinghai, there is a faint shadow of Zhenhai Palace. At least it is guided by Zhenhai Palace intentionally or unintentionally. Because only undersea aliens fight against each other, Zhenhai Palace can better control the underwater world of Wuxia. Otherwise, if the major races of the Wuxia underwater world unite, wouldn't it be difficult for Qin Yuan Jianzong to find it? For this, the various races in the Wuxia underwater world may not be invisible, but helpless Zhenhai Palace is too powerful. In addition, the various races have been fighting for countless years, and they have long forged a feud. You can't stop just wanting to stop. A few people talking. Two figures flew towards Luo Ziyuan's cave. Consciousness swept away. Luo Shiyuan found Chen Daoxuan's figure. Seeing Chen Daoxian as the patriarch of the subordinate race, Luo Shiyuan struggled to stand up and salute the other party, but his injury was too serious. At this moment, Luo Shiyuan couldn't even stand up. A simple action in the eyes of mortals. Feel sorry. Seeing Chen Daoxian, Luo Shiyuan squeezed out a wry smile on his pale face, cupped his hands and said, "This old man has a feigned body, so it is inconvenient to salute to the Lord." After seeing Chen Daoxian, the other mermaids bowed to Chen Daoxian and saluted despite their different expressions. "I have seen the Lord." "You don't have to be too polite." Chen Daoxian raised his hand. Seeing everyone get up, Chen Daoxian looked at Luo Xiu and said, "Senior Luo, I am here this time to borrow the spiritual veins of your merman." Although Luo Xiyuan was seriously injured, his consciousness was not damaged. As soon as Chen Daoxian entered the cave, he felt the harmonious aura on the other side. Obviously, the other party wants to use the third-order spiritual veins of the merman to build the foundation. For this request, the merman clan chief naturally has no reason to refuse. But he seemed to think of something and hesitantly said, "My lord, it's not that the old man deliberately refused, but I, Mo Yuanshan, have not been very peaceful recently." Talking, he explained to Chen Daoxian the fact that the Clear Water Monkey clan peeped at the Magic Monkey Mountain. Who knows that Chen Daoxian pondered after listening to it. "It's okay, it won't take a few days before and after I build the foundation. It's not so coincidental. Just when I build the foundation, the Clear Water Monkey clan will call at the door, right?" Speaking of this, Chen Daoxian laughed himself. The two races were fighting, especially races like the Merman race and the Clear Water Ape and Monkey race that had Zifu cultivators in charge. It is impossible to die without thinking. Just like when the Mare people attacked the Water Demon Ape family, they also tried for a long time before deciding to launch a general attack. Even if Chen Daoxian has bad luck. In the process of building the foundation, the Clear Water Monkey clan attacked. But the mermaid race can't even resist the opponent's tentative attack. After all, over the years, the mermen have purchased a large number of magical tools from his Chan family. In terms of the strength of the Qi refining period and the foundation building period, no matter how you look at it, it is much stronger than the Clear Water Monkey clan with bare hands. Luo Shuyuan heard this, also nodded in agreement. In his opinion, even if the Clear Water Monkey clan attacked the Demon Monkey Mountain today, there would be no problem for them to persist for 10 days and a half months. And this time, it was enough for Chen Daoxian to succeed in establishing the foundation. Think of this. Luo Shuyuan looked at Luo Li, who accompanied Chen Daoxian to enter the cave, and said, "Liar, you take the Lord to the Lord's spiritual eye of Demon Ape Mountain," and instructed to continue. "These days, my clansmen should not use spiritual energy to cultivate, so as not to affect the Lord. Foundation." "Yes, Daddy." Luo Li bowed. Out of the cave, Luo Li took Chen Daoxian straight to the main spiritual eye of Mo Yuan Mountain. After a while, among the mountains of Demon Ape Mountain, a huge lake of spiritual fluid appeared in front of Chen Daoxian. In the underwater world, seeing a spirit lake sounds a little weird. But for the admiration in front of him, Chan Daoxian can only describe it with Linghu. Due to the influence of seawater, the Linghu here is different from the Linghu on the ground. View from above. The spirit lake of the Magic Ape Mountain is a huge mass of spiritual liquid, floating in the eyes of the main spirit of the Magic Ape Mountain. It looked quite shocking. Chan Daoxian stood in front of this spirit lake, as small as an ant. Is this the main spiritual eye of the third-order spiritual vein? Thinking of the mouth of the Lingtan formed by the Chan family's first-order spiritual veins, Chan Daoxian couldn't help but said, "Yes, that's it." Luo Li nodded. With it, you don't have to worry about not having enough spiritual energy to quench your body when you build your foundation. This is not enough, this is simply too much. No wonder the third-order spiritual veins can support the foundation establishment cultivator to break through the purple mansion. Isn't it normal that such a huge lake of spiritual fluid can support the foundation establishment cultivator to break through the purple mansion? It would seem a bit extravagant to bring this spirit lake to build a foundation for him. However, the foundation built by Chan Daoxian is different from other monks in the qi refining stage, and it is understandable to be extravagant. Otherwise, if the second-order spiritual veins are used to build the foundation, the lack of spiritual energy will cause the foundation to fail, and Chan Daoxian can't even find a place to cry. Chapter 127. Southwest Waters of Wuxia. A common Yang's cargo ship is smashing the wind and waves, sailing in Guang'an Prefecture. Cargo ship deck. Two monks who had just established their foundation were talking through voice transmission. "Brother, this Izumo country battlefield is really a treasure for me to wait for loose cultivators. If we get the inheritance of the immortal mansion this time, we'll return to the Izumo country battlefield." By then, the rough-faced man paused, and his eyes showed hopeful eyes, not to mention Zifu and Jindan. "They are Yuanying Zhenjuan. You and my brothers are not too unreasonable." Hear this. The white-faced, beardless middle-aged cultivator, whom he called the eldest brother, was wearing a blue gown and looked like a scholar. I saw him with his hands on his back, looking at the sea, and said indifferently, "This trip to the immortal mansion is uncertain. You and I have just built the foundation. You must be careful and don't be careless." If Chan Daoxian was here, he would definitely recognize that this rough middle-aged monk was the monk named Sun who tricked him into buying the treasure map of Shinjue Immortal Mansion. "Yes, big brother, I will listen to you." The rough-faced man is simple and honest. Seeing the simple and honest appearance of his younger brother, the white-faced monk smiled and shook his head. Wuxia Underwater World. Demonic Ape Mountain Lord Spirit Eye. In the eyes of Luo Li's blessing, Chan Daoxian stepped into the spirit lake in one step. His whole body was soaked in the spiritual liquid of Linghu Lake. Dantian gas is domestic. The zhenqi that had been tempered once by the sword intent had long since been polished and blended into one, and there was no way to enter it. Think of this. Chan Daoxian first took out a foundation pill and took it, and then according to the breakthrough method recorded in Guiyuan Gong, he activated the true qi in the Dantian Qi Si. Running with the exercises, the true qi in the Dantian Qi Si is like a spark entering the oil, and it explodes with a bang. This shock was so violent that it was 10 times more violent than the true qi described by Chan Daoxian's foundation building experience obtained from various channels. But Chan Daoxian knew that this was the price to pay for taking the road of being the strongest swordsman. Fortunately, the foundation establishment Dan, which was taken in advance, played a role at this moment. The violent infuriating was slightly appeased by it. But soon true qi began to transform into true yuan. This time, the terrifying true qi mixed with true essence scurried around in the Dantian Qi Si, and the foundation building Dan was no longer able to appease. See, Chan Daoxian silently used the second-grade lotus of good fortune to absorb the violent real essence. In Linghu, countless spiritual energy rushed towards Chan Daoxian's body. A small part of these spiritual qi was absorbed by Chan Daoxian's body, tempering his body, while the other half rushed towards his Dantian Qi Si. With the support of an endless stream of spiritual energy, true qi seems to be endless, constantly being transformed into true qi. This moment, the transformed real essence began to rapidly expand the Dantian Qi Si. If Chan Daoxian's original Qi Si was only an inch short, then in less than 3 breaths at this moment, his Dantian Qi Si had doubled. Moreover, the expansion rate of the sea of air is getting faster and faster. See this scene. Chen Daoxuan's complexion suddenly changed. No. If things go on like this, the insanely soaring real essence will definitely burst his Dantian Qi Sea. Thinking of this, Chen Daoxian ordered the second-rank Good Fortune White Lotus in the center of Dantian to frantically absorb True Yuan. This moment, a strange painting style appeared in Chen Daoxuan's Dantian Qi Sea. On the one hand, the outside world was madly instilling spiritual energy into his Dantian, which he refined into true energy and transformed into true essence, and the madly soaring true energy was still expanding his Dantian Qi Sea. On the other side, in the center of the Dantian Qi Sea, there is another lotus-shaped instrument, which is constantly absorbing the skyrocketing true qi, preventing it from expanding the qi sea so violently. This time, with the help of the second-grade Lucky White Lotus, the speed of Chen Daoxuan's expansion of the Dantian Qi Sea quickly decreased by a large margin and returned to a relatively stable state. See this? Chen Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief. In fact, during the qi refining stage, the most feared thing for cultivators to build a foundation is that after the true qi is converted into true yuan, it will slam into the Dantian Qi Sea, bursting the qi sea. After all, the true essence that belongs to the foundation building stage, how can the Dantian Qi Sea in the qi refining stage be accepted? And the function of the foundation establishment pill is to appease the transformed real essence and make it less violent. But at the moment, for Chen Daoxian, the foundation establishment pill had no effect now, except to appease the violent infuriating qi at the beginning. The only thing that is useful to him now is the white lotus flower in his Dantian Qi Sea. You must hold on, Chen Daoxian said silently in his heart. In Linghu, around Chen Daoxian, the terrifying aura formed a huge aura vortex. Around the vortex, a large amount of spiritual liquefaction turned into aura, which was absorbed by Chen Daoxian. At the same time, new spiritual fluids are constantly being replenished, maintaining the consumption of Chen Daoxuan's foundation building. It's not just the change in the sea of qi in Dantian. Chen Daoxuan's physical body, also under such a huge aura-quenched body, began to strengthen little by little. Fortunately, Chen Daoxian has practiced body-refining exercises all year round, and his physical strength far exceeds that of ordinary qi-cultivating monks. Even compared with most of the foundation establishment cultivators, Chen Daoxuan's physical strength far exceeds them. Thus, the first difficulty in his foundation building, spiritual energy quenching, was the easiest level for him. Luoli looked at the expression on Chen Daoxuan's face in the Linghu Lake, and the expression on Chen Daoxuan's face was ferocious at first, and then returned to indifference. She knew that Chen Daoxian had definitely passed the most difficult level. Next, just choose a breakthrough step by step. Thinking of this, a smile appeared on Luo Likio's face, and she sat quietly on the stone beside her, protecting Chen Daoxian. Time passes day by day. Blink of an eye. A month has passed. This time, fortunately, Chen Daoxian chose to break through the third-order spiritual meridian. If he chose the second-order spiritual meridian, this breakthrough would definitely encounter the problem of insufficient spiritual energy, because the aura lake outside him has dried up nearly half. So many spiritual qi, all turned into Chen Daoxuan's body to temper his body and expand his qi sea. Of course, more importantly, it is the transformation of the soul. It's just that Chen Daoxian can't see the transformation of his soul, and he can't even perceive it. He can only perceive that his sea of consciousness is expanding, and his consciousness is increasing step by step. At this moment, he has not completely broken through to the foundation establishment stage, but he found that the range of his divine consciousness has exceeded the radius of the cultivator on the first floor of the foundation establishment. And this range is still expanding. This also means that the transformation of Chen Daoxuan's sea of consciousness is no less than that of his Dantian Qi Sea. It is also thanks to Chen Daoxuan's sea of knowledge that he is guarded by the Hongmeng Enlightenment scripture. Otherwise, Chen Daoxian will definitely fail in building the foundation this time. Because the foundation building is by no means the change in the sea of qi he imagined. There are also changes in the sea of consciousness. The reason why other qi refining cultivators did not encounter the difficulty of expanding the sea of consciousness was because the expansion of the sea of consciousness was far less terrifying than that of Chen Daoxian. Ordinary qi cultivator builds a foundation, and the range of divine consciousness can be transformed from a radius of 1 mile to a radius of 10 miles, which is basically the limit. And Chun Daoxian at this moment, the range of divine consciousness has almost reached a radius of more than 30 miles. This is already the strength of the spiritual consciousness of the late Foundation establishment monks, and what is even more terrifying is that his spiritual consciousness continues to increase. For monks, whether it is true qi or spiritual consciousness, it will not increase for no reason, it must be consumed. For example, infuriating energy consumes spiritual energy to gain enhancement, and the consumption of spiritual consciousness enhancement is relatively obscure. Many monks don't even know it. In fact, the enhancement of divine consciousness is closely related to divine soul. The stronger the soul, the bigger the sea of consciousness, and the stronger the consciousness. The transformation of the soul is closely related to the cultivation of the monk. Therefore, after the general cultivator breaks through, the consciousness will be greatly enhanced, which is the reason Chun Daoxuan's foundation building this time. Due to the influence of the Siyu Sword Intent and the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, the degree of spiritual transformation is far more exaggerated than that of ordinary monks. As such, not only is Chun Daoxuan's Qi Si expanding rapidly, the expansion of his consciousness Si is no less than his Qi Si. Even because of the existence of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, it is even more perverted. With the continuous expansion of the sea of consciousness space, the invisible and intangible consciousness is also increasing. Outside Linghu, this month, Luo Li has always been the guardian of Chun Daoxian. Sudden, Luo Li, who was closing his eyes and resting, suddenly opened his eyes. She frowned, looked at the female clansman flying towards her, and asked, "What's the matter?" Princess E, the Clearwater Monkey clan invaded the Demon Monkey Mountain, and they are calling the formation outside the main vein at the moment. After the female merman arrived, she hurriedly said. Chapter 128. Hurt. Luo Li glanced at Chun Daoxian and Linghu, and the eyes in her beautiful eyes gradually became firm. She shook her head at the female merman who came over and said, "Shaoqing, go back first, don't worry about me." However, the Clearwater Monkey clan may send a small group of soldiers to harass them from the rear at any time, and they will definitely pass through this place at that time. Her Royal Highness, it will be very dangerous for you to stay here. Is it worth it for this human race? The female merman named Shaoqing said anxiously. Is it worth it? In the underwater world, fighting, escaping, and fighting again have almost become the daily life of the Mare people. For the sake of a human race, it is possible to throw a small life here. Is it worth it? Certainly not worth it to any shark. But for Lori, she didn't want to see this special person to her die. Just like when she saw her mother fall in front of her, she couldn't do anything. This feeling of powerlessness she never wants to try again. Think of this. Luo Li took out 2 scarlet shadow swords and held them horizontally in his hands. On the delicate body, the spirit armor of life appeared. She looked at Shaoqing firmly, and replied with one word. It's worth it. Who knows? After Shaoqing heard this, the frowning brows gradually loosened. She sighed, then raised her head and said, "Since Her Royal Highness the Princess will not leave, then I will not leave either." Shaoqing, you. Shaoqing shook her head and said with a smile, "Your Highness Princess, you don't need to say anything." Seeing her maid's appearance, Luo Li showed a smile. "Good sister, it's just death." "Well, it's just death." In Linghu, Chun Daoxuan's Dantian Qi Si seems to have expanded to the limit. The rate of expansion gradually slowed down. See this scene. Chun Daoxian simply let go of the second-grade good fortune Bailian's absorption of true yuan. Immediately, the expansion of the Dantian Qi Si suddenly dashed once again. In the end, he remained motionless, unable to expand any further. To the limit. Chun Daoxian secretly said in his heart. Not only Dantian Qi Si but his consciousness Si is at least 100 times larger than before. That seems a little inaccurate. When the cultivator first came into contact with cultivation during the Qi refining period, it is equivalent to lighting a glimmer of light in the sea of knowledge. Except for the place illuminated by this shimmering light, the sea of knowledge is completely dark. And now, Chun Daoxuan's sea of consciousness was bright. The range that was illuminated was at least 100 times wider than during the Qi refining period. This is undoubtedly abnormal. During the normal qi refining period when a monk builds a foundation, it is not bad to expand the sea of consciousness tenfold. It is generally manifested in the range of divine consciousness, which expands from a radius of 1 mile to a radius of 10 miles. At this moment, Chun Daoxuan's divine consciousness covers the area. He immediately swept away his consciousness. 100 miles. Chun Daoxian took a deep breath. Doesn't this mean that my current consciousness is comparable to that of a cultivator in the Zifu? Think of this. Chun Daoxian couldn't help but look at the golden scripture in the center of the sea of knowledge. Is it? Although the comprehension of the sword intent will also increase the cultivator's consciousness to a certain extent, the more important function is to temper the cultivator's true energy, and the increase in the consciousness of the cultivator is far less terrifying. Only the Hongming Enlightenment Classic. Perhaps. This Hongming Enlightenment Classic also has many functions that he does not understand. It's just that his cultivation is too low now. He has only just established the foundation, and he can't find it at all. For now, Chun Daoxian discovered only 3 functions. First, restore consciousness. Second, and most importantly, store understanding. Third, help him expand the sea of consciousness when his cultivation base breaks through. However, at this moment Chun Daoxian couldn't care about so much, because he discovered that the Silk Rain sword intent that he had comprehended actually entered a brand new situation with the breakthrough of his cultivation base, like a wild horse running away. The realm of swordsmanship of swordsmen is actually greatly restricted by the cultivation base. When a cultivator is at a higher level, it is much easier to comprehend the sword intent than when he is at a lower level. Just like Yang Gongwan, the arrogance of the Yang family, if she chooses to break through the Zifu period, she will immediately understand the sword intent. Instead of standing still before the threshold of sword intent like it is now. But at the same time, the sooner a monk realizes the sword intent, the greater the benefit. For example, in the foundation establishment period, if you understand the sword intent, you can only refine true essence once. And a monk like Chun Daoxian has one more chance to temper his true qi than a cultivator who comprehends the sword intent at the foundation building stage. This opportunity is exactly what all the sword cultivators in the world dream of. Zhou Mubai mentioned it repeatedly in the Sword Dao Jade Slip, and the envy in his eyes was the state of Chun Daoxian at the moment. Of course, comprehension of different sword intents not only focuses on different aspects, but also has different degrees of comprehension of sword intent, and also increases the cultivator's combat power differently. When cultivators first comprehend the sword intent, they are all invisible. I know it exists, but I can't feel it, let alone touch it. And the second stage of sword intent. Zhou Mubai called it the tangible stage. The transformation from intangible to tangible is the second realm of sword intent. Zhou Mubai is now in this state. In this moment, Chun Daoxian discovered that the Siyu sword intent that he had understood had soared a lot, with the suppression of his cultivation base. He even saw a trace of starlight in his dantian. This is the Siyu sword intent that I realized? Chun Daoxian muttered. This starlight flickered and dimmed, as if it could be extinguished at any time, but it really existed, at least Chun Daoxian could perceive it. It's not like when I just realized the Siyu sword intent. Imperceptible at all. Ha 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 ha. Seeing this, Chun Daoxian, who was immersed in kendo, couldn't help but let out a cheerful laugh. Really? Once a breakthrough, clear the clouds and see the sun. At this moment he has a feeling of clearing the clouds and seeing the sun. Chun Daoxian took a deep breath. Immediately, he used the invisible starlight in his dantian qi si to refine his true essence for the second time. At the beginning, when he first tempered true qi, the quality of true qi increased by about 3 times. After breaking through the foundation building, true qi turned into true yuan, and the quality increased tenfold. Now, for the second time, he tempered his true essence. As the true essence of dantian qi si was tempered little by Chun Daoxian found that after the true essence was transformed into sword essence, the quality actually increased 3-fold. In other words, the quality of his current true qi is 90 times higher than the true qi he had when he didn't understand the sword intent at first. This is a qualitative change. There is no quantitative change yet. Of course, the other monks in the qi refinement stage were far less terrifying than him. After the ordinary qi refining cultivator successfully established the foundation, the true qi was transformed into the true essence, and the qualitative increase was about 10 times. That is, 1 true essence is comparable to 10 true qi. Even if the foundation building period attribute exercises are converted in the future, the power of the real essence will only increase to about 30% to 70% or 80% with the attribute bonus. Calculate like this. Ordinary cultivators can at most achieve a quality that is more than 10 times higher than that of true qi. Far from the exaggeration of Chen Daoxuan's 90 times. In other words, Chen Daoxuan's current real yuan is about 7 or 8 times that of a foundation-building cultivator who has practiced attribute exercises. What is this concept? In terms of quality, the mana of the Zifu cultivator is about 10 times that of the cultivator's true essence in the later stage of foundation establishment. Chen Daoxuan's current real yuan is 7 or 8 times the quality of the monk's real yuan in the early stage of foundation building. That is, 3 or 4 times the true essence of a cultivator in the later stage of foundation establishment. In other words, his current true yuan strength is comparable to the mana of the most common Zifu cultivator. When he converts to the attribute cultivation technique in the future, the real energy power can be increased by 70% to 80% at most. At that time, his true essence was comparable to 70% to 80% of the most common Zifu cultivator's mana. When he reaches the late stage of foundation establishment, the true essence will be stronger than the mana of other Zifu cultivators. This is also the reason why Zhou Mubai is obsessed with this path of sword cultivation, because the basic strength of this sword repair is really too strong. Chapter 129. In Linghu, Chen Daoxian is concentrating on refining his true essence. There are new changes in the outside world. As expected by the female merman named Xiaoqing, the Clearwater Monkey clan really sent a team of elites from the rear to test the truth of the mermaid clan. Although the patriarch of the Clearwater Monkey clan knew that Luo Shuwen, the head of the mermaid clan, was seriously injured. But it is not clear how serious the other party's injury is. It is even more unclear whether the other party's injuries have healed. Therefore, during this time he has not dared to act rashly. But waiting left and right, the patriarch of the Merman clan has never been seen. The patriarch of the Clearwater Monkey clan, who had not dared to act rashly, began to stir in his heart. As long as they take down the mermen, they will be able to occupy the area of the Demon Ape Mountain for thousands of miles. Such a huge territory. How many resources should there be, and how many treasures can be exchanged for the human race? As long as there is Magic Ape Mountain, their Clearwater ape family can rise rapidly. By the time, they who are stronger can completely abandon the Wu family and find a stronger human backer. For example, the Zhou family in Guang'an Prefecture. In addition, there is another reason why the patriarch of the Clearwater Monkey clan chose to attack the Mermaid clan. That is, the strength of the merman is stronger than them. Luo Shuyen, the head of the Merman clan, was in the late period of Zifu, and his cultivation was only in the early stage of the third order, which was equivalent to the early period of Zifu of the human race. If not before the Merman clan chief's injury recovers, the opponent will be removed. When the chief of the Merman clan recovered from his injuries, the unlucky one would be their neighbor, the Clearwater Ape and Monkey clan. After all, the Water Demon Ape family is also their close relatives. They have all seen what happens. Front. An elite team of 20 Clearwater apes flew over from the back of the demonic ape mountains towards the position of the main spirit eye. The second-order late-stage Clearwater Monkey, who took the lead, discovered Luo Li and Xiaoqing in front of Linghu. It waved to the clansmen behind it and communicated with divine sense. Kill them, don't let them pass the news back. Monsters are very intelligent, especially the ape-like monsters. Generally speaking, the spiritual wisdom of a first-order monster is only equivalent to that of a 7 or 8-year-old child, while the spiritual wisdom of a second-order monster is almost the same as that of a 16 or 7-year-old human boy. The ape-like monster's intelligence is even more exaggerated, and the second-order Clearwater ape's intelligence is no less than that of an ordinary adult. Here the order of the leader, the Clearwater ape. A group of 20 Clearwater monkeys rushed towards Luo Li and Xiaoqing in a mighty manner. Your Highness, be careful. Well, be careful too. Just finished. 20 Clearwater apes have been killed. The two sides did not have any nonsense, and they fought directly as soon as they met. Face this scene. Luo Li was used to it. Monster beasts are more direct than humans. They fear the strong, but they are far more cruel to the weak than humans. In Wuxia, what is pursued is the naked law of the jungle. Precisely because they follow this rule, Zhenhai Hall can rely on the frenzied slaughter, among the monsters and aliens, the inviolable prestige under the tree. Kill! Luoli took out 2 red shadow swords and charged towards the group of clear water apes. Xiaoqing is protecting her flank. The battle between mermen and monsters is very different from that of humans. Since both the monsters and the mermen have practiced the body training technique, they are more inclined to like melee combat. In other words, with the power of true essence and physical body, the strength of melee combat is stronger than that of remote control instruments. Of course, the Clear Water Monkey clan had no magic weapon at all. They were holding a different kind of iron rod that they got from somewhere. Howling, the group of Clear Water Monkeys killed Luo Li and Xiaoqing. Brush! 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 Luo Li's figure almost turned into countless afterimages in the Clear Water Monkeys. However, as a clear water ape of the same rank, he would not be fooled by Luo Li's movement technique at all. The only thing you need to pay attention to is the magic weapon in her hand. Under the infusion of Luo Li's true essence, the power that the Scarlet Shadow Sword erupted was completely different from that of a cultivator in the Qi refining period. But unfortunately, the rank of the Red Shadow Phagian is too low, only a mere first-order inferior. Luo Li didn't dare to pour his true essence into the flying sword with all his strength, because some people of the Foundation establishment period did this before. The pattern on the Red Shadow Sword was directly destroyed by the violent real essence. The flying sword pattern was destroyed, and the charm of the magic weapon dissipated, becoming no different from ordinary iron. Therefore, when Luo Li used the Red Shadow Sword, she would be careful, for fear of destroying it. As such, it is difficult to exert her strength, but no matter how you say it, it is better than bare hands. With the cooperation of her and Xiaoqing, 20 clear water apes continued to be injured. But none of their injuries were serious. It's just that there are bloodstains drawn by the Red Shadow Sword, which is completely harmless. The clear water ape at the head opened its green eyes, looked at Xiaoqing behind Luo Li, and ordered, "Kill her first." After a brief battle just now, it has found a problem. It is unrealistic to want to kill this merman in spirit armor in a short period of time. Because its iron rod knocks on the opponent's spirit armor, not only will it not hurt the opponent, but it will hurt its arm. The only way is, kill Xiaoqing next to Luo Li first, and then take advantage of their numbers to surround Luo Li in the middle, and slowly consume her true essence with will battles. When the other party's true essence is exhausted, whether it is round or flat, it is they who have the final say. It can be seen from this. The intelligence of this group of clear water monkeys is really no lower than that of ordinary people, and they know how to use tactics. Really, clear water monkeys' tactics changed. Xiaoqing's pressure instantly increased. Luo Li has the body armor of her life, but she doesn't. In an instant, all 20 clear water monkeys attacked her waving iron rods, and Xiaoqing couldn't bear it at all. See this scene. Luo Li was angry and anxious. She even used her own body to block Xiaoqing's attack, but it didn't work at all. The stick technique of this group of clear water apes is quite exquisite. He easily avoided Luo Li's slender figure. "Your Highness!" Xiaoqing watched countless stick shadows attacking her, and closed her eyes in despair. See, Luo Li's heart was ruthless, and she immediately used a forbidden technique. I saw that with the blessing of this access control technique, her movement speed was several times faster in an instant, and the attacks that were originally unstoppable were also blocked by her life spirit armor. Take spirit armor to resist damage. If it is looked at by a human race monk, it is estimated that it will be shocking. In the eyes of the human cultivators, the spirit armor is completely a life-saving magic weapon, and there is no one who takes the initiative to take the spirit armor and bump into others to attack. But at the moment, in order to save Xiaoqing, Luo Li had no other way. Under the blessing of prohibition, Luo Li's figure turned into countless afterimages, covering all the clear water apes. But unfortunately, the flying sword in her hand is too weak. It can only cut through the flesh and blood on the surface of the clear water ape. But with the resilience of Tier 2 monsters, the speed at which Luo Li hurt the opponent was not as fast as they did. Gradually, the prohibition period passed. Seeing countless stick figures fall on Xiaoqing again, Luo Li was desperate. This moment, she even saw a faint smile on the corner of Xiaqing's mouth. Are you dancing? At the time of despair, a familiar voice entered Luo Li's ears. The voice did not fall. A little star burst from the body of a clear water ape. Immediately afterwards, more and more stars appeared, and finally they all joined together. Just for a moment, 20 clear water apes were completely torn to shreds by the starlight, leaving no residue. He looked at the familiar figure in front of him. Luo Li was speechless. Half an hour. She raised her head slightly and said, Yes, does it look good? Chapter 130. Well. On the side, Xiaqing's groans pulled Luo Li back to her senses. Ah, Xiaoqing, are you all right? Luo Li immediately ignored Chen Daoxian, dropped the red shadow sword in his hand, and flew towards Xiaoqing. Look carefully. Luo Li breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it's just that the internal organs were smashed by a blunt weapon. The viscera was broken by a blunt object. This kind of injury is definitely a life-threatening serious injury on an ordinary person. But if it is placed on the foundation-building merman, it will at most be considered a minor injury. It will recover in a day or two. Xiaoqing glanced at Luo Li, then glanced at Chen Daoxian next to her. Her eyes lit up slightly and said, Don't worry about me for now, the Bishui monkey clan is calling out in front of the main vein. You go back to help. She told Luo Li to come to the rescue, but in fact she looked at Chen Daoxian. What she meant? How could Chen Daoxian not understand? It was nothing more than seeing that he easily killed 20 clear water monkeys in the foundation establishment stage, thinking that his strength was comparable to that of the Zifu cultivator. I want him to rescue the mermen. Only, Chen Daoxian didn't know the true strength of this clear water monkey clan. How could he be willing to take risks? Little Qing girl, right? Lord. Seeing Chen Daoxian, Xiaoqing struggled to stand up and salute him. Chen Daoxian nodded slightly and said, I don't know how strong the clear water monkey clan you are talking about is. Heard. Xiaoqing hurriedly explained. The clear water monkey clan is a race of ape-like monsters near my demon monkey mountain. Their patriarchs are only in the early third order, which is equivalent to the early cultivators of the human race Zifu. Hear this. Chen Daoxian shook his head. In the past, he would still use his cultivation base to judge the strength of a cultivator, but after discovering that there were still cultivators like him and Zhou Mubai in the world who did not use common sense, Chen Daoxian didn't dare to simply judge a monk's true strength by his cultivation base. It seems that the other party only has the initial cultivation base of Zifu, but how big is the difference in strength between different Zifu early cultivation bases? Just look at Zhou Mubai and Luo Shuwen, the head of the merman clan. At the beginning, Zhou Mubai probably didn't do his best, so he beat Luo Shuwen seriously and escaped. If he did his best, Luo Shuwen would definitely die in Guang'an Mansion that day. The most common Zifu cultivator, Chen Daoxian is indeed confident that he can fight against each other 1 or 2 times. But if the patriarch of the clear water monkey clan is Zhou Mubai, no, even if it is only half of Zhou Mubai's strength, Chen Daoxian went to support, and it was no different from courting death. Seeing that Chen Daoxian was silent, Xiaoqing immediately guessed his concerns. He opened his mouth and said, Please rest assured, Lord, if the patriarch of the clear water monkey clan is really strong, why wouldn't he dare to attack us directly, but choose to send his clan to test it? Hear this. Chen Daoxian felt that it made some sense. But he shook his head again and said, Perhaps it's just cautious by nature? Hear this. Xiaoqing suddenly did not know how to persuade. In my heart, is there anyone who is more cautious than you? Aside. Although Luo Li's eyes were full of anticipation, he did not want Chen Daoxian to take risks. For a time I was very conflicted. Half an hour. She looked at Chen Daoxian and said, You better go. There is no need to die with us. Aren't you going? Chen Daoxian looked at her in surprise. Oh, me? Where am I going? Luo Li's eyes were full of desolation. Hear this. Chen Daoxian's heart was touched fiercely. Thinking that she was willing to risk herself just to protect the law for himself, he hesitated at this moment. I couldn't help but secretly despised myself. Immediately, he looked at Luo Li with a smile and said, Since you don't want to leave, then I'll accompany you home this moment. Starlight sprinkled on Chen Daoxian's profile. Luo Li looked at the tall, handsome man in front of him and nodded vigorously. Okay, Let's go home together. Along the way, Chen Daoxian carefully calculated the method of retreating from the enemy. He finally had an idea. Under the main vein of Demon Ape Mountain, the patriarch of the Clear Water Monkey clan leads tens of thousands of people, and is staring at the mermaid people on the main vein. Confrontation. The patriarch of the Clear Water Monkey clan also spit out human words, shouting, "I don't know that the mere people have migrated here. It's really rude. Today is a special day to visit the mere people patriarch, and I also invite a few people to pass the word." A huge ape several feet tall, carrying an iron rod as thick as a tree stump, walked in front of the two armies, jumping and jumping. "Humph! Do you need such a big battle to meet the patriarch of my clan? Why don't you come here alone?" Hear this. The patriarch of the Clear Water Monkey clan turned his eyes, and there was a hint of fear in his eyes. But he said, "I brought a lot of clansmen on this trip. It is inconvenient to go to your clan. Please invite your clan chief out." After a pause, it said again, "Could it be that your patriarch was seriously injured by Zhou and died as rumored? If this is the case, I still have a spiritual elixir from the human race, which may save your patriarch's life, but it is unknown. Stop talking nonsense. Fight if you want." The headed merman old man blew his beard and stared. Hear this. On the contrary, the patriarch of the Clear Water Monkey clan did not dare to act rashly. It glanced at a clansman beside him, lowered his head and said, "What's going on? I sent out to test the true and false clansmen of the mere people? I don't know." After they detoured to the back mountain of Demon Ape Mountain, until now no news has come back. Maybe they encountered some trouble. The clansmen on the side tremblingly transmitted their voices. "What a bunch of trash!" The patriarch of the Clear Water Ape scolded. This time, a white figure flew out from the mercenary camp. He threw the head of a Clear Water Ape to the front of the two armies and said, "Are you looking for this? Human race?" Seeing Chen Daoxian, the aura of the patriarch of the Clear Water Monkey suddenly weakened. In the Wuxia underwater world, aliens have a natural fear of humans. This kind of fear comes from their fear of Zhenhai Palace. The patriarch of the Clear Water Ape took a closer look. That ape head seems to be indeed the clan he sent out. "This fellow Taoist, what do you mean by this?" Although his heart was full of anger, the patriarch of the Clear Water Monkey clan was cautious. Seeing its cautious appearance, Chen Daoxian was relieved. "The meaning of this seat, get out of the magic monkey mountain immediately." The words fall. A star pierced through the sea space, and instantly killed the patriarch of the Clear Water Ape. "See this sword?" Suddenly a threat of death enveloped it. Boom! Crucial moment. It raised the foreign iron rod in its hand and blocked the fatal blow. But its arms were trembling slightly. Obviously, the power of this sword was far beyond what an ordinary foundation establishment cultivator could use. Sword repair. Definitely a swordsman. This moment, it seems to have mistakenly thought that the person in front of him was the Guang'an sword immortal Zhou Mubai. But obviously the other side is not. Because it knew Zhou Mubai. It's not Zhou Mubai, and he's so young he's still a swordsman. There is no such person in Guang'an Prefecture at all. The only possibility is, you are the town. At this moment, the patriarch of the Clear Water Ape was so frightened that he couldn't even speak. Immediately after, it immediately threw away the iron rod in its hand, knelt to the ground with a thud, and shouted loudly, "My subordinate rammed the emissary of the Zhenhai Palace, damn it," saying that kowtow like pounding garlic. It's hard to imagine that a Clear Water Ape patriarch who was arrogant and domineering just now and wanted to exterminate the mermaid race is now kneeling on the ground like a clown, constantly kowtowing. This moment, Chen Daoxian was even more curious about Zhenhai Palace in his heart. What kind of existence can suppress the alien race to such a level of fear? Not only the Clear Water Monkey family. He carefully recalled the uncontrollable fear in the eyes of the other party when he saw the patriarch of the Merman clan for the first time and mentioned Qianyuan Jianzong, Qianyuan sword sect. Although Chen Daoxian had heard of this name before stepping into the path of cultivation, but there has never been a time when there has been such a shock. A cultivator from the Purple House knelt in front of a cultivator in the early stage of foundation building, and kept kowtowing. just by virtue of the 3 words of Zhenhai Hall under the command of Jianzong of Qianyuan. Chapter 131. Demon Mountain. The cave mansion of the head of the Merman clan. All right. Chen Daoxian pulled his right hand away from Luo Ziyuan's chest. Your luck is good. It coincides with my breakthrough in cultivation and great progress in swordsmanship. Otherwise, with your injury, you won't be able to live for 3 years at most. Luo Xuan felt that the sword qi of the wound on his chest was dissolved by Chen Daoxian's sword will, and he felt that his whole body was relieved, as if he had lifted the burden of hundreds of millions of pounds. This moment, although his face was still pale, the unparalleled strength returned to his majestic body. Thank you, Lord, for saving your life. Luo Xuan stood up, bowed his head in front of Chen Daoxian, and said respectfully. Chen Daoxian waved his hand. Get up. Thank you, Lord. Seems to think of something. Immediately, Chen Daoxian glanced at everyone strangely and said, Is the Bishui monkey clan so afraid of Zhenhai Palace? This sentence. Immediately, the entire cave dwelling was quiet, and needles could be heard. Half an hour. Luo Xuan cupped his hands and said, Lord, you may not live in the underwater world of Wuxia, and you don't know much about the situation here, so it shouldn't be said that the Clear Water Monkey clan is afraid of Zhenhai Palace. Instead, in the Wuxia underwater world, there is no race that is not afraid of Zenhadian. Not a single one? Chen Daoxian was quite surprised. There have been, Luo Xuan paused, but all of them have been exterminated. Speaking of this, his voice suddenly fell. Hearing this, Chen Daoxian fell silent. He originally just wanted to use the prestige of Zhenhai Hall to make the Bishui monkey clan avoid the mouse and retreat, but he did not expect the effect to be far better than he expected. The patriarch of the Clear Water Ape almost rolled and climbed to escape the demonic ape mountain. Visible. The 3 words in Haitian have left a shadow on it. Out of the cave, Chen Daoxian looked at the starry sky in the underwater world. This time, because his cultivation had broken through to the foundation establishment stage, he seemed to feel that the sea of stars above his head had become a little different. But where exactly is different? Chen Daoxian couldn't speak again. Let's go. He glanced at Luo Li next to him. Luo Li nodded, grabbed Chen Daoxian's hand and headed towards the sea. Actually, with Chen Daoxian breaking through the foundation building stage, he can already learn the technique of water escape, and there is no need for Luo Li to hold his hand anymore. But at the moment, the 2 of them seemed to have a heart-to-heart and did not mention this stubble. Out of the sea, returning to the human race world again, Chen Daoxian felt a sigh of relief. He glanced at Luo Li beside him and asked, Why do I think that you acted so calm when dealing with the invasion of the Clear Water Monkey clan? Am I wrong? I heard this. Luo Li was stunned for a moment, then shook his head with a hint of bitterness on his pretty face, and said, This is the life in the underwater world of Wan Xinghai. I've been used to it for so many years. One has already gotten used to it. It revealed too much bitterness that Chen Daoxian did not understand. This moment, he also didn't know how to comfort the girl in front of him. Maybe for her all comfort was pale. I'm leaving. He waved at Luo Li, then turned his head and flew into the air. Luo Li was the only one left, staring at his retreating back in a daze. Identify a direction. Chen Daoxian flew in the direction of Shuanghu Island. Compared to the refining period, the escape speed of the foundation building cultivator was more than 10 times faster. As a sword cultivator, Chen Daoxian's escape should be faster than the ordinary foundation building cultivator. But sadly, his current flight speed is really not comparable to that of ordinary foundation establishment cultivators. Because he had just broken through the foundation building stage, he had not had time to practice various sword flying techniques and the technique of escaping the light and turning into a rainbow. In addition, his 2 flying swords were also scrapped at the moment. Even if he learns to fly with the sword, there is no sword for him at all. After all, the patriarch of the Clear Water Monkey is equivalent to the early cultivation of the Zifu of the human race, and Chen Daoxian and his counterpart have a whole big realm, able to fight with each other. It is already a factor that his foundation is extremely solid, and the realm of Kendo far exceeds that of sword cultivators of the same level. If you replace it with an ordinary sword cultivator, you can at most be invincible at the same level, and it is absolutely impossible to cross a big realm and fight against others. Despite this, Chen Daoxian and the Bishui monkey patriarch fought recklessly, and it was not without cost. The price he paid was that the flying snow sword and Chungying sword were almost completely shattered. Think of this. He took out 2 flying swords from the storage bag. In particular, this flying snow sword can be said to have accompanied Chen Daoxian throughout his entire cultivation career. Even if it's not bad. With the service life of the first order magic weapon, the Feishua sword will not last for a few years, and the aura will gradually dissipate. Looking at the flying snow sword full of cracks in his hand, a trace of sadness flashed in Chen Daoxuan's heart. For Jianxiu, damage to the beloved Feijian is always one of the saddest things for Jianxiu. Chen Daoxian is no exception. As if feeling the master's intentions, the Feishua sword let out a slight whistle, but the aura of the sword body flickered, as if the aura would dissipate at any time. "Old man, next you can rest," said silently. Chen Daoxian put the Feishua sword back into the storage bag again, and accelerated towards Shuanghu Island, Twin Lakes Island port. Chen Daoxian made the market town established by Changji expand again. With the continuous flow of goods from the port, this market town seems to be blowing air, expanding in circles. Fortunately, Chen Daoxian greeted Changji and Chen Beiwang. Let them plan the various constructions of the market town in advance. Therefore, Chen Daoxian looked at this moment. The whole market town was messy but not chaotic. Compared with Chongping County, which has the largest number of Chen family members, it exudes more vitality. Chen Daoxian knew that this was an economic leap brought about by trade. The material base determines the superstructure. This principle is also common in the cultivation world. Only when the economy develops well will the Chen family grow stronger. Although the world is dominated by monks, the most numerous are ordinary people. For example, the Zhou family has a population of tens of millions, almost equivalent to a country with a medium population in a previous life. So many people. The resources consumed and produced every day are massive. Although these resource cultivators cannot use or look down on them, for ordinary people, they are necessities for their survival. In the Chen family, this part of the work has always been in charge of Chongping County Magistrate Chen Ji. In the future, Chen Daoxian will transfer this part of the work to the Ministry of People's Livelihood, established by Chen Jiesin for unified management. I watched the busy ordinary people for a while. Chen Daoxuan's mood improved slightly. Using the wind fighting technique, he flew towards the Chen family's spiritual meridian. It has not yet flown to the Chen family's Lingmai. Chen Daoxuan's consciousness swept away. Unexpectedly, I found that Uncle 13 was already teaching in ethnology. In the class of Chongping No. 1 Xiuxian Primary School, Chen Xianhe stood in front of the blackboard, explained to everyone the various barriers and understandings of Yuan Gong. It's just that this group of people of the blessed generation is just 5 years old, and many people can't recognize the hyphenation. Learning Yuan Gong gave Chen Xianhe quite a headache. Only now did he know how good Chen Daoxuan's talent was back then. No matter what, you can learn it as soon as you learn it, and you will be able to understand it at one point. Plus study hard and practice hard. A good embryo born to practice. Thinking of Chen Daoxian, Chen Xianhe was a little distracted for a while. This kid. The foundation should be successful. Although he was sure that Chen Daoxian would succeed in establishing the foundation, he did not come back for more than a month. It is impossible to say that Chen Xianhe is not worried at all. At this moment, Uncle 13. A familiar voice came from Chen Ziyan's ear. Hear this familiar voice. Chen Xianhe turned his head and looked out the window. A familiar figure appeared in front of him, smiling brilliantly. Chapter 132. Twin Lakes Island. Chongping No. 1 Xiuxian Primary School. In the first grade classroom, standing on the podium, Chen Daoxian looked at the people of the Fu family in front of him, and said with a smile, "You have all learned some basic knowledge about crafting from teacher Daochu, right?" "Learn." Inside the classroom, the Chen family student said loudly, "In your opinion, what is the purpose of the refining tool?" Hear this question. The students in the class whispered, not knowing how to respond. Half an hour. A little boy about 1.2 meters tall raised his hand. "Fulai, talk about it." Chen Daoxian pointed at the little boy who raised his hand. Teacher, I think the purpose of the refining tool is to enhance the strength of the monk and help the monk to survive the catastrophe on the way of cultivation. Very well, you sit down. Chen Daoxian looked around. Does anyone else have a different idea? This time, a little girl stood up and said crisply, Teacher, I think the purpose of refining is to make money. Ha 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 ha. In the classroom, everyone burst into laughter. Stop laughing. Stop laughing, what's so funny? Seeing everyone laughing at her, the little girl burst into tears in a hurry. Okay, everyone stop laughing. Chen Daoxian made a stop gesture, and everyone's laughter gradually stopped. After all, this person in front of him, in addition to being their teacher, is also the young patriarch of the Chen family. Fun, your answer is not bad, sit down. The little girl sat down angrily. Chen Daoxian glanced at everyone, then smiled and said, Actually, what Fu Lai and Fu Yuan said just now are true. We refiners are refining weapons to earn spiritual stones and buy cultivation resources. Ordinary monks buy magical instruments to enhance their own strength and resist the risks on the way of cultivation. There is no contradiction between the two. Chen Daoxian paused, but there is a problem, that is, in Wuxia, ordinary scattered cultivators often carry spirit stones, but they cannot buy satisfactory instruments. Why is this? Teacher, I know this because there are too few refiners. I know because the magic weapon is too expensive, ordinary scattered repairers can't afford it. This time, everyone started talking about various reasons. But to sum up, it's just that there are few artifact refiners and the artifact is expensive. Then do you know why there are so few refiners? It's because the cost of training a craftsman is too high, and a small family can't afford it. Chen Fulai replied. Right. Chen Daoxian nodded. The small family can't train an artifact refiner. The reason is that the profit earned by artifact refining is too low, and the loose cultivator can't buy magic tools, because the price of magic tools is too expensive. One party dislikes the low profit, but the other party can't afford it. In fact, both sides are not wrong. What is wrong? The fault is that our efficiency in refining magic tools is too low, and our productivity in producing magic tools is too low. Chen Daoxian looked at everyone. Therefore, the lesson I'm going to teach you today is to explain how to improve the efficiency of refining magic tools. Done. Chen Daoxian wrote a few big characters on the blackboard. The idea of industrial refiners. The students in the audience followed word by word. Industrial area. Hongyin Feijian factory. As summer approaches, the weather is getting hotter and hotter. Even with Chen Liangjia's congenital cultivation base, he felt that he couldn't handle the high temperature in the factory. Director Chen Liangyu was wiping his sweat, and a familiar voice made him raise his head. Young patriarch. When Chen Liangyu saw Chen Daoxian, his face was happy at first, and then he bowed to Chen Daoxian. Finished the ceremony. Chen Liangyu stood up straight and said with a smile, Is the young patriarch here to inspect the situation in the factory? Right, speak up. Chen Daoxian has not come to Hongyin Feijian factory for a long time. More than 2 years. He is basically busy with his foundation building and the education of the Chen family. The foundation is now established. The education problem of the Chen family has also been temporarily resolved. He finally found time to come to the factory to inspect the situation. Young patriarch, please come inside. Chen Liangyu immediately made a please gesture. Chen Daoxian followed Chen Liangyu into the factory. The current Hongyin Feijian factory has increased the number of melting furnaces to 9 compared to the one when it was first built. Of course, this does not mean that the production of Hongyin Feijian has increased 9-fold. The reason is that Chen Daoxian, Chen Daochu, and Chen Daolian couldn't do the refining at the Hongyin Feijian factory all day. Chen Daochuan needn't say more. He has been following Chen Xianhe to learn to manage the Chen family's magic tool shop. Now he can manage the magic weapon shop in Sangxiafang City in Guang'an Prefecture by himself. Chen Xianhe came back to teach. It just proves that Chen Daochuan has the ability to be independent. What makes Chen Daoxian even more happy is that Chen Daochuan did not slow down his practice because of the management of the magic weapon shop. Although Chen Daochuan's spiritual roots are not as good as Chen Daochu and Chen Daolian, he is also a cultivator of Zhongling roots. Therefore, over the years, Chen Daochuan's cultivation has also reached the 6th level of qi refining, and he is only one step away from breaking through the late qi refining stage. Take a closer look. The Chen family has changed a lot in recent years. Not only did Chen Daoxian successfully build a foundation, he became a foundation-building cultivator. Other Taoist monks also grew up. Chen Daochu and Chen Daolian, as monks with the same spiritual roots as Chen Daoxian, and their hard work and sufficient resources, the progress of their practice is no slower than Chen Daoxian. Even because they had sufficient cultivation resources from the beginning, they had to practice faster than Chen Daoxian. Both of them are now at the 9th level of qi refining, in a state of polishing one's own infuriating energy. As long as the infuriating qi is polished and integrated, one can try to break through the qi refining period. In addition to these three, the other 6 Taoist monks only had lower spiritual roots, and only 3 had just reached the 4th level of qi refining. The rest are all at the 3rd level of qi refining. But anyway, compared with the Chen family 5 years ago, there were only 2 cultivators, Chen Xianhe and Chen Daoxian. Already too strong, especially with the first batch of monks of the Fu character generation entering the clan. According to Chen Daoxuan's decision, after a year of basic education, the people of the Fuzi generation, it will be allowed to take Tongmai pill to help it open up the meridians of the whole body, saving a lot of time for cultivation. Only, there were 108 people in the first batch of immortal seedlings of the blessed character generation, all of whom needed more than 50,000 spirit stones to take Tongmai Dan. This is not to mention that more and more monks of the blessing generation are coming every year. Once these monks step into the path of practice, the consumption of spiritual energy and various cultivation resources will be massive. Just relying on the current Feijian factory of the Chen family, it is simply unrealistic to want to support so many monks of the blessing generation. Every time I think about it, Chen Daoxian felt a little headache. Home business hours. He is busy in the factory by himself, and he can make all the monks of the Taoist generation live very nourishing. But as the family grew, not to mention that Chen Daoxian was busy in the Feijian factory alone, even if he drove all the 8-year-old monks of the Taoist generation to the factory, the money earned was far from being consumed by the new generation of monks in the family. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.